Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rewatch podcast. My name's Samuel.
And my name is Jayden.
And this is a podcast where we talk extensively about a certain film and then decide whether it deserves a rewatch from you. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other place you listen to podcasts. If you enjoy the show, please leave a like on the YouTube video. If you'd like to reach the show, you can leave a comment on YouTube or send us an email at theonerewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Today, we're going to be talking about
Dune Part 2.
How exciting.
Yes. You've been waiting years for this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as part 1 finished, I was waiting for the second part, and now that part 2's finished, I'm waiting for the next part.
Yep.
So it didn't disappoint. We're going to talk about it today. It's not exactly going to be one of those reviews where we're just gushing over it for 2 hours. We're going to be talking in depth about what we liked and what we didn't like, and comparisons to the book and not. But at the moment, we're going to stay spoiler-free. So if you haven't watched the second film, then you're safe.
Yep.
Though we do
make mention about the first movie.
So make sure you watch the first film. Okay. So let's dive into a bit of story overview. Some factual information about the film. Let's go to Letterboxd and just get the plot synopsis for Dune Part 2.
Yep. Long live the fighters. Follow the mythic journey of Paul Atreides as he unites with Chani and the Fremen while on a path of revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the known universe, Paul endeavors to prevent a terrible future only he can foresee.
Interesting.
Before we started recording, I said to you that I didn't really like that synopsis.
Why is that?
I think, and this is usually the issue that we run into, it doesn't... This is a good broad overview, but there's so much more that happens in this movie that isn't included in that synopsis.
Do you feel like it represents the themes of the film, though? Like, it captures the spirit of the film, like what the film's actually about, the message?
Well, this, without going into full spoilers, the main message that I would take away from this synopsis is that he has to kind of disprove this future he foresees. Right. He has to prevent it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like that was one of the biggest themes of the movie.
Okay.
It was definitely there, but it wasn't one of the biggest themes.
Interesting.
There's a lot more that we'll talk about, whether that's in spoilers or non-spoilers, that isn't really mentioned in the synopsis.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. All right, and what's the current score on Letterboxd?
So this is a 4.6, which is...
So that's 4.6 average review.
It's kind of crazy.
It's very high.
Albeit, it did come out yesterday. Yeah. So, it's probably going to go down. It's just...
a bit of recency bias.
Yes.
We saw something very similar with Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Came out with a very high rating.
Yeah.
And no one's really talking about that movie now.
Yeah. And when you watched Godzilla and Kong, and you gave that like a 5-star on release.
No, I gave that like a 3.5 star, which is like 75%, which is like a B. And we have
still outrageous though.
So recency bias is still in play here. We obviously saw the film last night, so we are coming from a sort of recency bias as well. Though I don't think we're going to put that on display as much as I've seen some other reviewers who have clearly just come out of the theatre and are huge Dune fans and just gushed about, I love this, I love this, I love this.
Yep.
Sure, this was different, but I still love this and this is... Anyway, that's my review.
Yeah.
This is going to be a critical discussion.
I think.
We're going to take it apart and, go through the good and the bad.
And the ugly.
Yes, for sure.
Wait, is Christoph Walken in... Good? No, he's not.
No.
No, that's the other one. So that's the summary. The Letterboxd... the IMDb ranking, you said it was... So on release, it was initially number 1, and it was heavily advertised that this was the number 1 movie on IMDb, in terms of ranking. We just had a look. It's number 22 now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you can sort of see there that it's gone a bit down even a day after release.
Yeah.
So that recency bias is sort of dropping off. But, I mean, for a movie to land even in the top 50, even a day after release is kind of crazy. Yeah, so,
for sure.
That just gives you an idea as to what this movie is. Did we want to move on to spoiler-free talk?
Yep, so we'll continue the spoiler-free discussion. So if you have not seen Dune Part 2, you're still safe. So don't go anywhere. Our expectations going into this film, obviously, we've done a podcast on the first film. We both love the first film, it's probably fair to say.
Yep.
So in terms of a 0 to 10 on the hype scale, how hyped were you for this film?
I feel like you were more hyped than me, but that's not to say I wasn't like really excited. Like there was, I sort of felt like I was waiting a while for this movie, and
it was delayed.
That's because we were waiting a while. I mean, this was meant to come out in November, Australia, last year, so it's sort of hard knowing that you could have watched it back then in IMAX. So we sort of missed out on that opportunity, but no, I was very excited for this movie. Probably not as much so as other movies like Oppenheimer. I was probably more excited for, but no, I was decently excited for this.
Yeah. I think my hype level was
through the roof.
Well, yes, because in terms of this year and last year, in terms of the offering of good movies or just simply movies that I've been interested in and awaiting, there hasn't been a great many.
Yeah.
It's been a tough few years, Murray, for the films. It's been a tough run. We've had a lot of garbage, and there's a few gems here and there, but they're few and far between nowadays.
Yeah.
But this is a franchise that I love. Obviously, I've read the first 3 Dune books, thoroughly enjoyed all of them. I'm obviously a huge fan of the first film. I've watched it many, many times.
The first Denis film.
Yes, the first Denis V film. We went to see the rerun of Dune Part 1 in cinema recently.
Yep.
That was great fun. So I'm a huge fan of this franchise, and I know that Denis V is a great director because I'm a big fan of his as well. So I had good reason to believe that this was going to be a great film.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really like nervous about it. I was assured that it was going to be good. I just wanted to see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was pretty hyped, fair to say. So yeah, I mean, my expectations were pretty high, but I would say this film did a better job at meeting my expectations than, say, something like The Batman.
Yeah.
Which kind of left my expectations were so high for that film that even though the film was good,
Yep.
it wasn't the greatest film I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Whereas this is much closer to being
Yeah.
one of the greatest films I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the hype was rewarded in a sense.
Yep.
But we're still going to discuss some things that perhaps prevent this from being a perfect film.
Yeah. So, did we want to touch more on what we thought about Part 1 just quickly so we can give the
absolutely.
audience some context?
Yeah, for sure.
If you want to go first.
Yeah, so obviously watching Part 1, having read the first book at that stage, was an incredible experience because seeing something that you have read come to life is truly remarkable. And that experience was incredible. Seeing the pages go onto the huge VMAX screen, it was a great experience. I didn't quite get that with this film, Dune Part 2, because obviously we've already had that. You know, we've already seen Timothée Chalamet play Paul Atreides.
Yeah.
So that sort of has worn off a bit, you know. But Dune Part 1 is one of my favourite films of all time. I own the 4K. I watch it quite regularly. As I said, we went to see the rerun. That film, for me, is a great adaptation. It's not perfect in the sense that there are things that are omitted, but I feel like it's very faithful to the core themes of Dune. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion in this podcast about what makes a good adaptation and what's sort of the limit between changing things and going against the themes of the original source material. But for me, Dune Part 1 is almost perfect.
Yep.
You could not make it much better.
Yeah.
So I have no complaints. I'm a huge fan of that film.
Yeah.
Yourself?
Yeah, likewise. I'm sort of the opposite end of the spectrum in that I haven't read the source material. Embarrassing. But in a way, it's kind of a good way to approach this. And I think we might have spoken about this on the first podcast that we did. By the way, if you haven't seen the first podcast, go watch it. We sort of talked about how you had read the books and seen the movie, and I hadn't read the books and seen the movie, so it was interesting seeing how I felt as sort of like a newbie to the content compared to you, who obviously is more, experienced with the material and what's going on. That being said, we both gave it an A+ rating, so it's clearly a good movie, regardless of whether you have read the source material or not.
And that's a huge strength.
That's a huge achievement. Yeah. For a sci-fi movie that complex to do that is pretty crazy. And I don't think we give out perfect ratings lightly. Like we're pretty fair with our movie rankings. So that should just speak as to how great we thought the first movie was. More deeper sort of thoughts about it. I really, really like the story, and I think I'm going to make a comparison when we go into spoiler territory about how I felt the material was in comparison to the first and second movie, because they're very different movies, even though they are from the same source material. I felt like they were very, very different.
I agree.
Whether that was intentional or not, I'm not too sure, but that's how I felt. But in terms of just general thoughts, it's a movie that I've returned to several times. Like you, I've got the 4K Steelbook, so I returned to it. I saw it multiple times in theaters. It was one of those movies where I was blown away whilst watching it, and after watching it, I was like, holy shit, like that was a crazy movie. There's only been a handful of movies that have really done that for me, and that was one of them. Whether that's happened on part 2, I guess you'll have to listen to find out.
Certainly the first one was a cinematic experience, but also a great story, and also a great adaptation. So for me, that's sort of like the holy trinity.
Yeah, for sure. Would you recommend this to someone who hasn't seen it?
So you've got to at least watch the first film.
Yep.
If you go into... Denny V said in an interview, I wanted to make Dune Part 2 a full package, in the sense that if you hadn't seen the first one, then you could watch this and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Could you... I don't think you can.
No.
I don't think you can. And I honestly don't know why that was an objective of his. It's a part 2.
Yeah, you don't just join in on a part 2, do you?
Yeah, you don't... For me, at least, I don't see the logic in making a part 2, but then also having regard to someone who hasn't seen part 1.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of things that happen in Dune Part 2 that don't hold your hand. They don't really explain plot lines that happened in the first film. So it's odd. It's odd that he said that. But for me, you have to have watched Dune Part 1.
Yeah.
At least.
Sure.
Obviously, if you've read the book, you might be able to jump straight into Dune Part 2. I don't know why you would do that, though. So,
if you're reading the book, you're a hardcore fan.
yeah,
so
watch them all,
you've seen the first movie. No, my thoughts are pretty analogous in that, like, you have to see Part 1 first. Like you said, this movie is a lot more complex with the way it just sort of drops you into all of these themes and all of these characters and their names. So it's just going from like not watching Part 1 to watching Part 2, you'd be like, what on earth is going on? I mean, it's a direct continuation. Like the first scene is a direct continuation.
Absolutely.
So, no, you most definitely have to see Part 1 to see Part 2.
Yeah.
In terms of a rewatch, what would you say to that Part 2?
Obviously, I'm very keen to have a rewatch. We have not rewatched it yet, but we certainly have plans to. I'm going to watch this film many, many times.
Yep.
And I can't wait for the day that we get the 4K of Dune Part 2 and we can watch both back to back.
Yep.
That's going to be an experience. And I think that's also going to be very interesting to see the differences in Part 1 and Part 2.
Yep, for sure.
But yeah, definitely I recommend a rewatch because this film, there's so many details. It's so fast. There's dialogue that I know that I missed. And I know that when I rewatched the first film, I picked up on more things. I enjoyed it more the second time. So I get the sense that on my second time, I might enjoy it more. Or, maybe the flaws stand out to me more on the second time. So it's going to be interesting, but I definitely highly recommend the rewatch. It's one of those films that you got to see multiple times in the cinema, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those movies that it's just not the same on a home viewing media.
No.
Like, it's made for the cinema.
Yeah.
Long live cinema.
It's yes, absolutely. It's made for the huge screen and the sound system because my goodness, the sound, if you put this movie on with a sound bar in an apartment complex, you might smash your windows and
the neighbors' windows
and and have noise complaints all over the place because it's loud. So
very loud. Saying that, watch this in the loudest, biggest cinema that you
absolutely
possibly can.
Get your ears blown away. We're here for a good time, not a long time.
Exactly. Let's talk about... We sort of made mention of Dune Part 2 being more complex. Let's talk about the pacing of this second movie. How did you feel like the pacing was?
In comparison to the first film is very contemplative in the sense that you're being introduced to all of these world elements. Like, you're being introduced to House Atreides. Who are House Atreides?
Yep.
Who is Paul Atreides? What is Caladan? What is Arrakis? Who are the Harkonnens? Who is the Emperor? You're being introduced to these world-building elements. And it takes its time doing that because it has to teach you. It has to teach you what is the sandworm? What is the Fremen? All these different questions. And it goes through and answers those. And then I'd say, the first 2/3 of the first film there's not much action. It's a lot of dialogue. Still very interesting, of course. But there's a lot of dialogue. There's a few set pieces. But there's no huge battles.
Yeah.
Whereas this is essentially just all battles. It's kind of like, the first one was Fellowship of the Ring. And Dune Part 2 is essentially just the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
But just the Battle of Helm's Deep. Not much else.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean.
No, I definitely... Yeah, that's a good comparison.
The pacing in the second one is much more brisk.
Yeah.
You've got to hold on to your hat for this one.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like in the first one, you can sort of sit back and just absorb and just be in the world.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like I was sweating in Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
Just with all the things going on.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
No, there's a hell of a lot more going on in the second movie, and maybe that was intentional, that he made the first movie more of like an introductory movie to the material, just so people understand what's going on, and then he can just sort of go all out on the second movie, and that's where all the action is that people can enjoy. But that's not to say that the first movie isn't good. Like I sort of preferred, or not preferred, but I really enjoyed the slow, cruel sort of element of the first movie,
Right.
where you would just sort of, like you said, exploring this world. It's sort of like Avatar 2 in that way, where there's like that middle stretch of the Way of Water, where there's like the whole whale sequence.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not a movie.
Yeah.
You're just watching like this, you're essentially just exploring the world. There's nothing actually going on. So yeah, the first movie is sort of like that, where it's introducing you to all of the content.
There's also, I think, in the first film, an emphasis on Paul Atreides. You follow Paul Atreides quite closely in the first film.
Yeah.
Because, he's the fish out of water. He's the one moving to Arrakis, so he doesn't know what Arrakis is. So he has to learn, and therefore we can learn about Arrakis.
Yeah.
In the second film, we've been introduced to so many other characters like Jessica, Gurney Halleck, the Baron, the Emperor, all these different characters. And we're jumping around. So perhaps I make the comparison to A New Hope, Star Wars A New Hope, when it's a much more smaller story, but we're focusing on Luke Skywalker and his journey. Yep. And he's going through all these obstacles. We're following him through that. Whereas in Empire Strikes Back, we're jumping to the bad guys, to the good guys, to some other good guys, to some other good guys, and then finally we were back to Paul.
Yeah.
But we just went through 5 different scenes where Paul wasn't there.
Yeah.
We're off in some other world. So it's kind of like the Empire Strikes Back, going around the different worlds in the galaxy.
Yeah, and I think that's an easy comparison to make, because obviously Star Wars was based on Dune.
Yes.
And I think there's definitely like clear comparisons to Dune Part 1 being A New Hope, and then Dune Part 2 being Empire. And just like the characters, like there's mention of Gurney Halleck being a smuggler in this movie. I was like, that's Han Solo.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's definitely characters in this movie that it's like, okay, he shares very similar themes to, Darth Vader or the Emperor. Yeah, that's sort of how I felt about that.
Yeah.
Did we want to touch on the particular characters and cast?
For sure. Let's go through. Obviously, the main man himself, I feel like he hasn't been getting enough praise. And I feel like this happens sometimes when the main lead is so good that instead of walking out and going, man, Timothée Chalamet was so good as Paul Atreides, you go, wow, wasn't Austin Butler great as Fade? Because obviously we haven't seen him before. And he's the villain.
Yeah.
So he's new and interesting. We don't know much about him. We're introduced to him. Whereas Paul Atreides is just, he's still there.
Yeah.
But Timothée Chalamet is so reliable. The movie doesn't work without him.
No, for sure. Yeah. No, his performance in Part 2 is like levels apart, above Part 1.
Yeah.
Like
he has to transform a bit.
It's crazy the difference in terms of how he has evolved his character. And there's a clear moment in the movie, and we won't talk about it because obviously spoiler free, where his performance changes drastically, and you can notice it. He changes like his voice, he changes his mannerisms, and
just the way he holds himself.
Yeah, I've never seen that from Timothée Chalamet before. I've seen a few of his movies, and I haven't seen a movie performance as good as he has done in this movie.
Yeah,
I think this is his best performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people have been saying, Timothée Chalamet, we've seen him in a lot of, young teen dramas where he's playing like, the flaky teenage boy.
Yep.
Maybe he's a bit mopey.
Yep.
And that works really well in Dune Part 1 when we're introduced to Paul Atreides, who's a prince on Caladan.
Yep.
But now he's been thrown into the fire on Arrakis, and he's become a Fremen warrior, and now he's becoming a leader of people.
Yeah, yeah.
So we need to see that transformation, and I think we really did. And I actually heard that in the first film, Denis told Charlemagne to stop acting like Muad'Dib.
Oh, okay.
So stop acting like the person you're going to be at the end of this saga.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, you're still Paul Atreides.
Yeah.
Because this is part 1.
Yeah.
You're Paul Atreides. You're just a young boy from Caladan. So don't act like a leader. You're a timid young boy.
Yeah.
So you
Be
better,
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, be, but not in Return of the Jedi.
In
A
A New
New Hope.
Yeah.
You know. So I felt like that was a really interesting comment from Denis, to essentially remember that your character's going on the journey, but in part 1, we haven't really seen him go on that journey just yet. It's incomplete.
Yeah.
But now we have.
Yeah.
We've seen him transform.
Yeah.
So.
Let's talk about the follow-up co-star, Zendaya as Chani or Chani or whatever you want to call her. What did you think of Zendaya's performance?
Honestly, the first film, she was in Visions, and she should have been just in the Visions, and she was. She's not in the first part of the book, obviously, because he doesn't meet the Fremen.
Yeah.
He's met the Fremen now. Chani becomes a big part of the story, and I feel like, as far as her performance goes, she did quite well.
Yeah.
It's probably the best performance I've seen from her. Obviously, I'm not the biggest Zendaya fan.
Yep.
In fact, some would say I'm a hater. Just because I've seen her as Mary Jane and she's just awful in the Spider-Man films.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's her fault or the director's fault, maybe it's both.
Yeah.
But here, she gives a really good performance. So perhaps maybe it is the Marvel director's fault.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like most performances that I've seen from Zendaya, she's sort of overacting a bit, if you know what I mean. She's very dramatic with her expressions and the way she delivers her lines. So I sometimes feel like she has a bit of trouble capturing the quieter moments. But in saying that, I think she did pretty well in this movie. She wasn't really... I sort of felt like in part 1 she was a flaw of the cast a bit. Whereas in part 2, I can sort of look at the whole cast as a broad, sort of spectrum, and I can, she doesn't stick out as a sore thumb in the cast. She just sort of does her part.
Yes, yeah.
She's not a standout for me, but she plays the part really well.
She has a lot of screen time.
Yeah.
And she certainly wasn't bad. I think I have other issues with her role, but I'll keep that for spoilers.
Yeah.
In terms of her performance, she did well.
Yeah. Probably the next biggest role would be maybe Lady Jessica, or actually, I'm just going to call her Lady Jessica from now. So played by Rebecca Ferguson. What were your thoughts on Rebecca Ferguson?
Obviously, one of my favourite parts of the first film. And in the second film here, we see her take on a bit of a different role as well. So kind of like Paul, she sort of has to become something else.
Yeah.
Due to the demands of the story. And I think she did well. I think she had less screen time.
Yeah, I felt that as well.
Which was a shame. Maybe if I was the director, I would have given her a bit more and Zendaya a bit less. But I think she did very well. There was a particular scene where I got goosebumps because of her acting.
Yep.
In fact, there might have been 2. So,
yep.
So full credit to her for that. Lady Jessica's one of my favourite characters of the Dune story. So, what did you think?
This isn't like a hate on her performance, but I sort of liked her character more in the first one. And yeah, I think it's just an issue in terms of screen time. Like, we didn't get enough time with her in this movie as I would have liked.
When you say you like her more in the first one, do you mean that you liked her performance more, or do you like the character?
I like the character more.
Okay.
I think the performance isn't the issue in this. It's just that we didn't get enough time with it.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I just enjoyed her character more in the first one, and I guess we're gonna have to, wait and see if they make any sequels to this movie and see if there was a broader vision for her character, because it sort of feels like she has a bigger part to play but we haven't seen that yet. So yeah, maybe it's sort of I need to keep watching to fully appreciate her performance in this movie, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. The fact that she has a box on her head also takes away from the
It does a
performance.
bit. Yeah.
Because in the first film, she does such great acting with her face,
Yeah.
and obviously now she's got this huge like Reverend Mother helmet on, which looks great. Costume design is fantastic.
Yeah.
But the unfortunate thing about such a design is that we can't actually see much of her face. So.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about Josh Brolin, and I think just for time's sake, we might have to start because this cast is huge, so we might have to start just going through them. Yeah. Josh Brolin. What are your thoughts on Josh Brolin?
Reliably good.
Yeah,
just as good as the first film. It's been a rough 2 months for him. He's lost a lot of weight. He's grown a lot of beard in 2 months or whatever it is. But yeah, he's great. Obviously, less screen time for him as well. In fact, maybe it would have been similar. I liked that he was, still a supporter of Paul. So I don't want to get too much into spoilers, obviously, but reliably good.
I like how Josh Brolin was sort of he was like the anchor to the legacy that was in the first movie
Of Duke Leto, right?
Yeah,
of Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
Obviously being killed.
Yeah.
This is to revenge Oscar Isaac, to avenge Duke Leto.
Yeah, because there's not much mention of Duke Leto in this movie. Very, very little, in fact. And Josh Brolin sort of felt like the only character that really continued on that legacy and made mention of it.
And
like
felt the loss of it.
Yeah, you sort of felt like the character's arc was to avenge Duke Leto.
Yeah.
And even Paul didn't really go through that arc in avenging his father, like nowhere near as much as Josh Brolin did. Austin Butler as Fade Rotha or Routher.
Yes.
Who knows?
Both is used in the film, so fantastic, really, really good. I had a feeling that he was going to be great. The voice was good. The voice worked for me. The swagger worked for me. Great interpretation of the character from the book. Almost, I'd say the character design isn't authentic to the book, but they got the main things perfectly in terms of the swagger and the sort of sadistic nature, but also the sort of sexy. He's always got the sort of seductive element to him.
Is that taken out of the book?
Absolutely. No. It is taken out of the book faithfully. Cool. Just in terms of the character design. I mean, he's described as having hair in the book, for instance. So, and the Harkonnens don't look like how they look in the movie, in the book. But because this is a visual storytelling, we need to differentiate between the Harkonnens and the rest of the people. So I honestly think that such a change is good.
Yeah, it's one of those changes that sort of you need when you're making a film adaptation. Otherwise, like you said, it would just be really hard to differentiate them. In terms of what I thought about Austin Butler, I think he was... this goes hand in hand with Timothée Chalamet, who have been actually incorrectly calling Timothée Chalamet. It's Timothée Chalamet, by the way.
You're joking.
No, it's a French name, so it's Timothée. But we'll continue calling him Timothy.
Timmy C.
Timmy C. Austin Butler was easily one of the standouts for me. His performance was great, and you really sort of hated his character. He was sort of one of those characters that you just sort of want to die.
Just for no particular reason.
No particular reason, like Professor Umbridge in Harry Potter, or just one of those characters that just you don't like. They're just evil, like really, really.
And
evil.
that's the way that he carries himself. That's the performance. That's not a particular story element.
So. And I haven't seen a lot of Austin Butler. I haven't seen Elvis. But,
fantastic! Elvis,
he was fantastic in this.
I honestly think he should have won the Oscar over
Who got the Oscar there?
Brendan Fraser.
Ah, he did too. You've seen both movies, so you better comment on that than I did. Florence Pugh as Princess Irulan Carino. What do you think of Florence Pugh?
So when I heard that Florence Pugh was cast as Irulan, I thought...
You went a bit nuts?
I did go a bit nuts. It's a good description. I did go a bit nuts because, to me, Anya Taylor-Joy is who I picture when I read about Princess Irulan.
Yeah.
Because to me, Anya Taylor-Joy just looks like a princess.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Though, I think Florence Pugh is a terrific actress. And she nailed it. Irulan isn't in the first book. She essentially shows up at the end.
Yeah.
But, however, she kind of serves as a bit of a narrator. Without spoiling too much of the book, she does sort of provide historical quotes and things like that. So I think her role was honestly expanded here. A lot of people have been saying, oh, we didn't get enough of Florence Pugh. No, we got almost too much of Florence Pugh. We got more than we needed of Florence Pugh. But she was terrific. I mean, I loved her. I thought she was great. Very, very good performance and faithful performance. I still think Anya Taylor-Joy could have maybe done it better. To me, it wasn't much of an issue because I knew Florence Pugh was going to be good. And I thought maybe Anya Taylor-Joy's just got another movie going.
Yeah.
So they can't cast Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah. But that wasn't the case.
But that's not the case because, as we'll see later on in the casting list, Anya Taylor-Joy's in the movie too.
She pops up.
So that kind of made me angry again. But look, I know you're a big fan of Florence Pugh, so what did you reckon?
Yeah. I'm going to be that person that says, I wanted to see more of her. And I know that you just said we got plenty of her.
Yeah. Well, that's the two perspectives.
That's just coming from someone who hasn't read the book.
Yeah. She was great, though. Don't worry, we will get more of her.
There was I read a review prior to this that sort of said, at times it sort of felt like she was just there to look cool in her costumes and stuff.
She looked cool, though.
Did you ever feel that, though? Like, she wasn't really... Her character didn't have any...
Like Padme Amidala and Attack of the Clones. Like, every scene's a different outfit. And she's kind of just there.
Like, what was the overall... point of her character? Like, was she just there to look cool beside the Emperor?
For me, she's there to speak to the Emperor.
Okay.
And to give us a way of knowing what the Emperor's thinking.
Yeah.
And also a way of introducing us to the Bene Gesserit a bit more. You know, giving us some further depth into their sort of cult. That's the role that was expanded upon. That, you know, is obviously implied in the book because Irulan is a Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily see some scenes in the film, in the book.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
Okay.
But could have happened off page.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So there's definitely scenes missing from Princess Irulan's character that weren't in these movies?
No, I'm saying that in terms of the scenes on the page in the book, we got way more than...
In the movie?
Way more in the movie.
Okay. Yeah.
So her role was expanded.
Yep.
Kind of like how Zendaya was in the first film, when she didn't really need to be. She was kind of just there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of Irulan here.
Yeah, true.
And we're going to see a similar thing happen when we go into the next film.
So she's big in Dune Messiah.
Chani's role expanded in Dune Part 2.
Yep.
Irulan's role will be expanded in the next film. Okay. As I imagine Anya Taylor-Joy's role is going to be too.
Yeah, for sure. Dave Bautista, let's just, sort of quickly go over him.
Menacing villain.
Yeah.
He was good.
Yeah.
Not the standout.
No.
Played his reliably good part.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about what I thought about him as well.
Did a good job. Not his best acting performance, but...
No. But still good.
Yeah.
Christopher Walken as the Emperor Shaddam Carino IV.
I'm interested on your thoughts on this because in the first film, the Emperor is mentioned, and obviously we know that the Emperor sent House Atreides to Arrakis to die.
Mm-hmm.
So he's made a play against House Atreides, but we never see him in the first film.
Yeah.
What did you think about being introduced to him here? You know, what were your thoughts?
I like the concept of leaving the Emperor out until the second part. I really like that because it gives you, it lets you sort of wait and has you consider that this universe is a lot bigger than what we understood in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like it sort of goes from this tiny little, planet that we're being on to this huge universe where there's this emperor that controls the whole universe. That being said, man, I don't know. I wasn't that big of a fan of Christopher Walken. He didn't really give Emperor to me. Like, he wasn't... I don't know what I was expecting, but I sort of felt like I was expecting something more. And it's nothing against his character. It's just, like, I don't feel like he looked like an emperor. I don't feel like he moved as much as he should have. Like, his character intentions, like, I would have thought he would have been more demanding.
He is the ruler of the universe, after all.
Yeah, like, I felt like he was just a regular dude, you know? Like, I don't know. What did you think?
I agree.
Yeah.
I think, especially in the costume design department,
It's just so boring, wasn't
could
it?
have been more grand.
Yeah.
Florence Pugh had some grand outfits.
Yeah.
And she also had some very minimal... Look, Denny V's style is minimalist.
Yeah.
We see the...
Brutalism is the way people put it.
brutalism, yeah. The house designs, for instance, the palaces... There's no furniture, essentially. It's just all lots of straight lines.
Yeah.
There's no sort of warmth to it. Very, very brutalist. And he takes the same approach with the costumes. But I wanted something more grand for the Emperor, who's supposed to be the richest guy.
I think that's a good way to put it, is I just expected something more grand. And that's not just, like, the way he looks, but the way he acts.
Yeah.
I wanted something more grand.
I wanted, like, a bit more build-up to his arrival.
Yeah.
Sort of the sense that, like... And whenever you see him, maybe he's sitting on a throne high up or something, and his voice comes down, and it's a booming voice.
Yeah.
So, not just like walking around the garden with his daughter.
Yeah.
You can have that, but yeah, I understand what you mean. And I was honestly, when I first saw the trailer and I saw him talking to Irulan, I thought, I thought that the Emperor would always be wearing some incredibly extravagant headset thing with gold chains or something to demonstrate the wealth and the power. But then that's Danny V's style, and I think it works really well with a lot of different elements.
It just didn't really work for me here. I'm going to make a weird comparison here that I think you probably won't agree with, but the way that they sort of handled Snoke in The Force Awakens, where he was this hologram where you didn't know his character, and he was on this massive hologram, and you wanted to see more of him. I feel like that's what I was sort of waiting for. It was like this grand character that we don't know anything about, but we know that he's like
The boss.
He's in control.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I was just waiting for.
No, I agree. The thing is, story-wise, we've come into his rule at, the end.
Yeah.
So we're not seeing him govern for thousands of years before this.
Yeah.
So there is, like, how do you demonstrate that he has ruled the galaxy with an iron fist for thousands of, like, without just saying it, because a throwaway line is a throwaway line. So it's difficult, but for me, the way he was filmed and the costume design could have assisted with portraying that grand image of the Emperor.
Yeah. Or just some better arrival,
Yeah.
Like, he needed more
More build-up.
grandiose entry.
Yep.
The fair Hawat is in the cast list.
Well, interesting.
Interesting.
Maybe he was cut.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Leia Seydoux. What do we think of Leia Seydoux?
Look, man, she uses her Bene Gesserit powers on Fade.
Mm-hmm.
If I was Fade, she wouldn't need to use any powers on me. I won't elaborate further on that point. Look, I knew she was going to have a small role. I think you maybe were expecting her to have a bigger role.
Yeah. I was.
But I thought she was good as a Bene Gesserit, you know. She played her part well.
I love Leia Seydoux. I think she's a great actress. Again, yeah, like you said, I think I expected something more. Was it accurate to the source material? Can you confirm?
I can confirm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
The main scene we see her in is accurate to the source material.
Cool, okay. Stellan Skarsgård, huge part of the first movie, like massive part.
He's kind of
booted to the side a bit.
Yeah, he was kind of humiliated.
Yeah, he was.
You know, without getting into too many spoilers, of course, but yeah, less of a role, but that's to be expected.
Mm-hmm.
In the first film, he's the big baddie, and he's not the big baddie anymore. So
yeah, I think. Yeah, it's sort of like let's make a mention to Snyder's Justice League.
Okay,
where you have
like Steppenwolf and Darkseid.
Steppenwolf and Darkseid. Okay. It's like cool, you know, we've had our time with Steppenwolf. We want to see Darkseid now.
Yeah.
And in a way, we didn't really get Darkseid. We got Christopher Walken, who's kind of boring. So, oh well. And lastly, let's finish on Javier Bardem. I think he's probably the last important main character.
A standout of the first film.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like he was a bit of a different character.
For sure.
In the second film.
Yep.
I still liked him though.
Mm-hmm.
I still liked him. I thought he was quite funny.
Yep.
But then I have a different question as to whether he should have been funny.
Yeah.
But that's a story thing. I think his performance was great. And there was one particular shot that I think sells the whole movie.
You're going to have to talk about that when it comes up.
I will.
Because I don't know what you're talking about.
I'll show you.
Yeah. Prior to us watching this movie, you sort of made mention a lot that you were like, look out for Javier Bardem. He is going to be the standout in this cast.
Still, that's my favourite character in the books.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think he was great, but he wasn't... I don't think he was as good as Timothée Chalamet or Austin Butler.
His role was, I think, cut for Zendaya's sake. I think Zendaya did a lot of stuff that Stilgar does in the books.
Okay, yeah.
In terms of showing Paul the way.
Yeah, so people say that he was like the standout role here. He was great, but yeah, not really a standout for me. Like you said, I think he was sort of the comedic character here. Like he sort of carried the comedy a bit. And this movie was a lot more funny than I thought it was going to be. Maybe it shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
The first movie is a hell of a lot more serious than this one. Okay, in the interest of time, let's move a bit. Let's talk about the visuals.
I knew the visuals were going to be good. The visuals were good. Good CGI. A budget used wisely, which you don't see much nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh. What expensive movie came out recently? Like
Indiana Jones.
How much was that? 350 million?
350, yeah.
And you could make 2 of these movies with that budget.
Yeah.
Beyond me. But
that
it goes to show...
did I tell you that I watched that movie?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It was
terrible. I've seen scenes. It's
bad.
The green screen is
really
horrific.
bad. Yeah.
So it goes to show that Denis is a master of his craft in the sense that the same way Christopher Nolan is a master of his craft. No matter the story that's put in front of him, you know that he's going to get the best out of the cinematographer, the best out of the visual effects, the best out of the music. Good one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there was a huge improvement in terms of the visuals. Like Greg Fraser, who's an Australian, by the way.
Good on
he kind of popped off a bit. Like, I think that was one of my favorite parts about this movie was the visuals. There was like multiple times where I leaned over to you and I was like, holy crap, bro, that's awesome. There was this one scene, and I don't think it's spoilery, where Paul was kind of walking, and in the background there was like this massive, is it a Shai Halud?
Yeah, a massive sandworm.
Yeah, massive sandworm just like sort of coming out of the sand behind him, but it's like sort of blurry a bit. Damn, that shot was so cool. And just like the color grading, I think was a lot better in this movie.
Okay.
And the scenes with the black and white, so cool, man.
Yeah.
Like I from the trailers, I'm a pretty, I don't know much about this universe, so I'm kind of a noob. But I thought that the black and white was an aesthetic choice for the film.
Same. When you saw it in the trailer.
What do we hear in the books? Is it
so in the books, it's not
black and white.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because in the film, obviously, but then how do you in the book say, oh, so by the way, we're on Gady Prime and
it's black and white.
It's black and white.
Yeah,
like,
true.
how do you say that in the book?
Is there a black sun there?
I'm not sure. There may be.
Okay.
I think there might be. However, I don't know whether in the books it specifically says, and the light is different.
But I enjoyed it.
For me, it worked really well. It also explains why the Harkonnens look the way that they do.
Yeah.
Like they've never seen the sun because they haven't, or they've seen a black sun.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be just a black and white scene as well. But Denis actually filmed it with a specific camera where, it wasn't necessarily black and white. Like it was an infrared effect.
Yeah.
And there was no digital altering. So that was how it was filmed.
Oh, okay.
So he said to Warner Bros, are you sure you want me to do this? Because once I do it, we can't go back. Like we can't just change it to color.
Yeah.
But they backed him in. So good on Warner Brothers.
Cool.
They did something good for a change. Thank goodness that they let Denis actually do what he wanted to do.
For sure. No, we there was a point where we watched the first movie and the second hadn't been confirmed. And I think everyone was a bit nervous. We were like, okay, is the second one going to get green lit? Thank God it did, by the way. And a third one's going to get made by the looks of it, just by, the way the box office has kind of erupted. No, I really like the stylistic choice of the black and white. I think it worked really well. And it wasn't just like a black and white filter, because there was scenes on Gady Prime where they were walking inside and there was still color. Yeah. So it was the sun that made the outside world black and white. Let's talk a bit about the sound and a bit about the score.
It's always had a really interesting sound design. Mm-hmm. I think of the thumpers, which are the things that the Fremen use to call the worms. Mm-hmm. Such a distinct sound. Obviously, the score is fantastic. Yeah. A lot of the sound design is remarkable. It's what sort of makes the film a cinematic experience for me. I honestly appreciate the audio much more when I go to see a film now. Mm-hmm. And the first Dune, it was a big reason because of that. Yeah. So, 10 out of 10 on the audio front for me, though you had some issues with mixing.
Yeah.
So did I, to be fair.
Yeah.
So, some dialogue.
Yeah, there were points where, and I don't know whether this is just like it's meant to be viewed in IMAX, so other formats just sort of, have a bit of flaws. But yeah, the mixing was a bit off for me. There was points where Hans Zimmer was going like so crazy that I couldn't hear what was going on. I think it worked better in the first movie. Like there were points in the first movie where it was so loud, but there was no dialogue, so you could just kind of appreciate what was going on. No, but in general, I think the sound was great. Like there was moments where I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Yep. And that's what the sound is there to do. So, a bit about the score though. I think Hans Zimmer was great. We sort of had a talk about there not being as much scenes to connect to this particular soundtrack, if you know what I mean. Like in the first movie, we could relate, ripples in the sand to the sand crawler, I guess, sequence, or you could relate leaving Caladan to when he's leaving Caladan, or even
there's
My Road Leads into the Desert.
Absolutely,
so much.
Yeah,
I didn't feel that.
It's hard to describe that phenomenon. There is, when you watch the first Dune movie, I go, "Ooh, they're about to leave Caladan," and I'm excited. Not because they're actually going to leave Caladan, but because the song "Leaving Caladan"
is about to come in and cook up.
Yeah, exactly, and take the film on his back.
Yeah,
and there was something so special about a couple of those tracks in the first film, and maybe we're going to see them when we rewatch Dune Part 2. But at the moment, for me, the specific tracks maybe weren't as distinct.
Yes.
As in the first film.
Yes.
But Hans Zimmer still cooked, man.
Oh yeah, he did.
Hans Zimmer was cooking in the first film, and he didn't turn the stove off. He just kept cooking, and
he's still cooking.
He's still cooking. He's still. Christopher Nolan is banging on the kitchen door saying, "Hans, come on, I've got a couple movies in the pipeline. Are you going to do some music for me?" And he's just like, "Nah, sorry,
nah, Dune."
Denis and I are still working.
He's like tunnel visioned on Dune. Great way to put it is like there's not as much distinct tracks, and I think a great comparison is, Into the Spider-Verse versus Across the Spider-Verse. When I left Into the Spider-Verse, there was scenes where, I was like, okay, that song was awesome. Whether it be What's Up Danger.
Absolutely.
Or obviously Sunflower. In Across the Spider-Verse, there wasn't as many distinct themes on an initial watch where I was like, that song was awesome. But after, Across the Spider-Verse came out quite a while now, there's been a moment of reflection, and there's songs that I really enjoy from Across the Spider-Verse, like especially
It just took you some time.
It took me some time, so I think it's going to be one of those things where multiple rewatches of Dune Part 2 are going to offer a better appreciation of the soundtrack, and you're going to be able to link certain songs to certain scenes in the movie. I think that's just what's going to happen. Yeah. Let's have a chat about... let's go into more detailed thoughts.
Okay.
So this is going to include spoilers. So if you haven't seen Dune Part 2, this is your invitation to click off now.
And go see it.
Go watch the movie, because what are you doing? And then come back and listen to our more detailed thoughts about it. Rightio. So let's talk about the opening sequence. This is obviously... the Harkonnens are sort of now patrolling Arrakis, trying to hunt down all of the Fremen. What did you think about the starting sequence?
It was
actually let's preface this by saying
let's give the context.
We actually missed maybe the first 5 to 10 minutes of the movie.
I think maybe the first 5 minutes max.
5 minutes.
I think so. We missed a bit at the first 2 scenes, I believe.
Because some idiots were sitting in our seats.
Yeah. So
they were very nice about it.
They're very nice, but they're very wrong.
Yeah.
About their movie ticket times, and because of that, we missed seeing the first bit. But when we got in, I was a bit angry. It took me maybe 10 minutes to get into the film.
Yeah. It took me a bit longer, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I get what you mean.
Yeah.
I was certainly out of it. I wasn't ready to go because we'd missed it, and then I was angry that we'd missed it.
Yeah.
And I thought, God damn it, I'm never going to see this movie again for the first time.
Yeah.
And these idiots who have sat in our seats have ruined my life, essentially, at that stage.
But at the same time, when you go to rewatch it, it's like, oh my God, I get to see
now
something
I get to see
new.
it again. So it does incentivize the rewatch.
Yeah.
And it's a core memory now. I'm sure that I'm going to remember going to see Dune Part 2, because the first time I went to see it, somebody sat in my bloody seat. And... yeah, so
it's a bit frustrating.
Next time you go to the movie theater, just double check that your ticket
Yeah.
is for the appropriate date.
I want to know how they got in. How did they get into
Well,
the movie?
nobody checks the tickets, do they?
That's true.
So that's
we
the
live
main
we live in
problem.
Australia where no one checks the movie tickets,
Yeah.
especially in Queensland. We've been to Sydney and they check movie tickets, but in Queensland it's just sort of
You just
thing.
walk in.
You just walk in and watch the movie.
Yeah.
So-
And every time we walk in with our ticket in hand, we go, you know what? You could probably just walk in here any day without a ticket and just go see a few different movies.
Yeah.
And nobody would bat an eye. As long as you know what time to go into what cinema, you'd be fine.
Yeah.
So event cinemas need to step up their game because they honestly took... we should seek damages.
I think we should have gotten a free ticket.
Emotional damages for not seeing the first part of a movie that I've waited 3 years for.
This probably sounds really dramatic to our audience.
Look,
but
first world problems, but it is what it is.
This is what we live for.
We work very hard for our money.
Yeah.
We work very hard for our money.
Yeah, we did.
And we booked early.
Yeah.
We
We're
booked
in the
early.
middle of the theatre.
Yes, right in the middle. We booked early because I wanted to be right in the middle.
Yeah.
And we were, and then we arrived on time, still with maybe 10 minutes of ads left,
Yeah.
and someone was sitting in our bloody seats. So
It's a bit annoying.
anyway, so it took me a bit to get into the film
It took
because
me like half an hour, honestly, man. Like I was just thinking that whole half hour. I was like, what have I missed?
yeah,
How much have I missed?
yeah,
Because like something like Oppenheimer, like the starting intro of that is so crucial to the movie. You know, you have the whole Prometheus stole fire from the gods,
yes,
gave it to man, like the opening sequence, and then you have the not the hearing. Oh yeah, the hearing where he's sort of, you know, talking about why he should continue to stay an American citizen and have his permit or whatever. It's so crucial to the rest of the movie, and I feel like I missed such an important part of the movie.
yes,
I mean, there was a sequence because one of the people that we went to the movie with got to see it, that she sort of told us what happened, and it was a scene containing Princess Irulan. I mean, that's huge, man. We missed that.
yeah.
We'll see it on Rewatch. So
We will.
it'll be alright.
We will. But for that reason, I think we might not have enjoyed the first chunk of the film as we might have liked.
Yeah.
But I found the action scene interesting. I didn't recognize it from the book, but then again, I haven't read it in a few years. So, but yeah, obviously seeing Paul and Jessica become Fremen, sort of integrate into that culture, was very interesting, and they did it well.
So they used Jarmus as bait, essentially, right? Because Jarmus was the guy in that bag.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So they were still carrying him from when Paul,
yeah, obviously delivering him to this sacred lake that they have.
yeah, to take his water and stuff.
And they had the opportunity to use Jarmus as bait, from what I understood, to attract the Harkonnens and then essentially just murder them all.
Yeah.
Kind of giving like Ewok Hunt vibes.
Harkonnens wouldn't stand a chance against the Ewoks.
No shot. I felt like the screen on this scene was very dark because it was sort of set at like sunset, and there was just portions where I was like really squinting at the screen, just trying to like see it.
Okay.
So I don't know whether that's an issue with the film or whether that's an issue with the format, but that's just what I felt. So the scene could have sort of contains Paul and Jessica learning the ways of the Fremen. There's a scene in particular where you made mention of you getting goosebumps.
Oh, yes.
Did you want to talk about that?
So, look, I get goosebumps every now and then in films. I think of, for instance, the final battle in Avengers. I get goosebumps. Obviously, in Dune, the first one, I get goosebumps. In the Leaf and Caladan scene, for instance. But I don't think I've ever gotten... I'll get goosebumps sort of like on my arms. Like I feel it on my arms. I'd be like, oh, this is pretty cool. I was head to toe goosebumps watching Rebecca Ferguson, Jessica, Lady Jessica, taking the water of life,
which is essentially
going into her fit, and then sort of transforming into the Reverend Mother. And then you also see the fetus that she's carrying sort of become infected with the blue sort of worm.
I was getting Oppenheimer vibes.
Same.
Yeah,
I was getting Oppenheimer vibes too in terms of the close-ups with
the
you know, it's got this sort of the bass tones, and you're seeing close-ups of liquid and everything. Yeah, very cool. Yeah. So maybe it was a callback to Oppenheimer, but
maybe.
So for me, that scene was really good. I also got goosebumps when she was walking around and she was talking to her fetus, as you do, and she saw some Fremen who were a bit scared of her, and she sort of just took a moment and was like, these Fremen are scared of us, and we need to use that. We need to make them more scared. And so she just kind of stared at them, but the stare sort of changed as the camera zoomed in. It sort of started off as she's just looking at them. And then by the end of it, it's like, this is an evil lady.
Yeah.
And that, for me, kind of just embodied the character development in a microcosm of Lady Jessica. So I got goosebumps then as well.
Yep.
I got goosebumps one or two other times throughout the film, but I can't pinpoint the exact moments. But I know that Lady Jessica gave me goosebumps twice.
I feel like this is just something I'm thinking of on the spot, but I feel like the way that her character evolves is done really quickly. Just like looking at from where she came when the Reverend Mother first visited Paul in the first movie, and said, "Put your right hand in the box." How she was acting outside the door at that point, where she was, very emotional, compared to how she became the Reverend Mother in this movie. I feel like it happened really quick, and I wanted to see more of vulnerable Lady Jessica. I don't feel like I got enough of that. And maybe that's just an issue, like I raised at the start, where I just don't enjoy this Reverend Mother version of Lady Jessica as much. I sort of like the more intimate...
The sort of mother...
Yeah, I think I preferred that a bit more. Because it's a very drastic change. Like, they're two very different versions of the character. But hey, I mean, it's accurate to the source material, so...
I think something like that, it comes down to the runtime. There certainly could be more development for Jessica. I think there could be more development for Paul, really.
Yeah.
In this film.
Yeah, honestly, same goes with him.
But the movie, as it is so briskly paced. There's hardly any room to breathe. So I struggle to see where they could have done it. I haven't seen... This is a point that I raise quite often when we review films. A lot of film reviewers just say, "Oh, I think this film was great. It was just 20 minutes too long." And then to that we ask, well, what 20 minutes are you cutting out of this film, you idiot? And they probably would not have an answer for that.
Yeah.
So it's a stupid criticism.
Yeah.
For me, I haven't heard much of that for this film. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes. So there's been shorter movies where people have said, "No, it's too long."
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Release the 5-hour cut. Give us a Lord of the Rings extended edition type thing, maybe. Maybe there's some scenes. I feel like there was a lot on the cutting room floor of this. I feel like there was some connective tissue that had to be stripped out for the sake of time.
Yeah, I feel like this one moved maybe just a bit too quick. The obvious comparisons probably, like I said just before, like Into the Spider-Verse versus Across the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse is more of a introduction to the character. You're thrown into this world and you're living vicariously through this character, understanding this world. Whereas the second movie, Across the Spider-Verse, is like there's so much happening because they want to expand so quick and just fit everything in. I feel like that's sort of what happened with Dune Part 2, where there's so much content, even though at the start you said there's less content in the second half of the book. I felt like there was more content for some reason. Like there's so much more going on because it moves so much quicker, and it's a longer movie. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I just wanted some time to further explore the characters and the themes a bit more. But again, like I don't know what I would cut out.
It becomes a question of should this have been a trilogy? Should the first book have been a trilogy? And I think Denis might have liked to have done a trilogy, but Warner Bros. Weren't going to buy that when he said, I want to do a Dune movie. They said, okay, you can do a Dune movie, 2 hours 30 for Dune. And then he said, absolutely not. And they said, oh, okay, well, how about 2 movies?
Yep.
And he said, after probably quite a bit of a battle, said, okay, fine, we'll give you 2 movies. We'll see how your first one goes. If it does all right, we'll give you another one.
Yep.
So I don't think he was in a position that the source material was not commercially viable enough or commercially valuable enough to be granted 3 movies from the get-go. And to do a part 1 of 3 is a bit different than doing a part 1 of 2.
It's just it's a hard creative decision.
What does he do? Like, short of just making a 4-hour movie.
Yeah. He was...
And Warner Bros. Weren't going to let him do a 4-hour
movie. The studios... There's some studio interference
and
there.
you need a studio to do it because you can't do this movie with a $20 million budget.
Oh, most definitely not.
You can do dialogue, sure. You can do costumes, but you can't do sandworms. Forget it.
Yeah.
Can't do spice.
It's incredibly rare that movies nowadays get greenlit for anything more than 2 movies.
Yeah.
Even 2 movies is hard, man. Like, Dune Part 2 wasn't confirmed. Lord of the Rings was confirmed, all 3 off the bat. And the way that I look at Lord of the Rings,
but you don't have worms in Lord of the Rings. I know you have like elephants.
What are you saying, bro?
You don't have like huge sandworms in Lord of the Rings. Like I know you have like elephants, and there was still CGI in that movie. But...
The sandworm, well, not sandworms, but there's worms in The Hobbit.
Okay,
very very similar.
Well, but The Hobbit had a huge CGI budget, didn't it? So it's like you got to look at it in the sense that there hasn't been a big blockbuster Dune movie before. There's been a 1984 movie which was a huge flop. There was a niche sci-fi TV series which people...
I think there was 2 movies.
Yeah. I think there was a... They did
David Lynch and
and
there was in the 2000s.
There's a mini series that did Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. So it becomes a question of what do you do? Like, you need a film blockbuster budget in order to do Dune correctly.
Yeah.
With sandworms and explosions and all that.
I feel like I just needed a 3rd part.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not a 3rd part of it being Dune Messiah. That's a 3rd part of the original Dune book that I think maybe it needed.
Yeah. Because then maybe the second movie becomes Paul just in the desert learning the Fremen ways, and then at the end of the second film, maybe he rides the sandworm. There's revelations about Jessica being the Baron's daughter, kind of like Empire Strikes Back,
Yeah.
They're on the run from the Harkonnens.
Yeah.
And then in the 3rd film, it's essentially the big battle.
Yeah. Lord of the Rings sort of does it well because let's compare Gandalf. Like, Gandalf's spoiler. Gandalf's, character evolution when he dies to the Balrog. Well, he doesn't die, but when he fights the Balrog and comes back as the White Wizard, that character progression's only done over the span of 2 movies. But I felt like it's so much more impactful because we spend so much time with Gandalf the Grey that when he becomes Gandalf the White, it feels like you've been through like 10 hours of like content to see that transformation. Or even something like Eowyn, or Eowyn rather, where she goes from, just like this regular person who is the princess at Rohan to killing the Witch King. It's like it feels so much more detailed and so much more expansive than, say, Paul or Lady Jessica in these movies. The character transformation takes part over a longer period of time that you're able to appreciate it more. And maybe that's something that this movie needed. But again, that's just the studio decision that's hard to work around.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Bene Gesserit. You've sort of noted here that there's a dynamic change.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a dynamic change in the sense that we see the Bene Gesserit, and particularly Lady Jessica, take on a bit more of a villainous form.
Mm-hmm.
The Bene Gesserit serve their own ways, right?
Mm.
They've been crossing bloodlines for generations to bring forth an individual who has essentially all of the different powers of Dune, Mentat capabilities, Bene Gesserit capabilities, and also be a man.
Yep.
Because then he can look into the ancestors of his male side and female side, consult the future and the past, and lead the world to paradise, essentially.
Yeah.
But the Bene Gesserit also want to control that individual. So that's the ultimate goal. They are assistants to the Emperor, but they don't give a shit about the Emperor.
Yeah.
The Emperor, if the Emperor gets toppled by a Harkonnen, they don't care because there's going to be a Bene Gesserit who's getting up to mischief with the Harkonnen having his baby.
Yeah.
So that they don't have political ties. They serve their own designs, as it's said in the first film. In this, we explore a bit more of, is that a good decision? Are these people morally
sound?
Yeah, morally sound. And I enjoyed that because it's explored quite well in the book. And it's very weird that they are doing this. They do seek to control the Kwisatz Haderach. Obviously Paul becomes the Kwisatz Haderach, but they can't control him.
Yeah.
So they need other prospects, and they do have other prospects. So now maybe they want to get rid of Paul because
He's too powerful.
We don't want a powerful person to be able to not do what we say. We want to be able to control them. That's why they were saying they were having a look at Fade and saying, okay, how can we control Fade?
Yeah.
So I think that was really interesting. That was a scene that I think Irulan was added into. So Irulan was in council when they were talking, the three Bene Gesserit. It was the Reverend Mother Gaius, Leia Sidhu, and Irulan.
Yeah.
I believe, if I remember correctly, I'm scratching my head, literally. I don't think Irulan's in that scene in the book.
Yeah.
So she's been added to that.
Yeah.
But I think she was a good addition because they're all Bene Gesserit, so it makes sense. So I really like that. The Bene Gesserit, a core, fundamental part of Dune, one of the most interesting parts of Dune. Obviously, huge influences on things like the Jedi in Star Wars. They have the voice to be able to sort of say something at a particular tone where you're just going to obey it. So I think that was really interesting. And Paul telling the Reverend Mother, silence, aka, get stuffed, when she starts spitting orders at him.
Yeah.
That was one of the best moments
I
in
like
the film
that as
for
well.
me.
Yeah.
Because that shows the Bene Gesserit thousands and thousands of years trying to bring forth this individual. They did it. Oh, crap, we can't control
He's
him.
too powerful.
Yeah. What have we done? That's Dune for me. That's Dune.
No, that was a great moment. I was just going to bring that up. The fact that he yells at the Reverend. Well, not even. Actually, no, she is a Reverend Mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the one in the first film that does the Gom Jabbar on him.
Put your hand in the
And
box.
she's like, come here. She uses the voice on him. And he's like, you dare use the voice on me. And she's like, put your hand in the box, you idiot. Like listen up, boy.
Yeah.
You're going to die, but whatever.
Yeah.
You have signs, but your father's dead. Your mum, maybe you'll survive. We'll see how you go.
Yeah.
and Paul's just like, this disrespectful bitch.
Yeah, yeah.
And then she comes in trying to squabble him at the end, being like, you have no idea what you're going to do.
Shut up.
Silence.
Yeah, The Rock. Shut up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that was great. That was great. And that, he does say that exactly in the book. So I really like that too.
Cool. No, that was a great scene for me.
And also, Jessica, you see that she doesn't really... She kind of separates from the Bene Gesserit viewpoints.
She does a bit.
She becomes a Reverend Mother, obviously. But you see her sort of telepathically communicate, which is a bit weird. They can't necessarily do that. But she sort of has a discussion with
the other
Reverend Mother, saying like, you took the wrong side. And the Reverend Mother's like, sides?
There is no sides.
There is no sides. We serve our own thing. Like,
yeah.
So that's interesting because as a Bene Gesserit, Jessica isn't supposed to take a side, but she clearly did take the right side. But then, so the Reverend Mother, I mean, we don't like her. She's just unlikable. But is she correct in saying you shouldn't be taking sides? We serve our own designs. If we messed up, that's our fault.
Yeah.
You've gone against us. Because remember, she wasn't supposed to have Paul. She was supposed to have a daughter.
Yeah.
And that daughter would have probably had relations with Fade.
Yep.
To
and then created
bring forth.
the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And Jessica was like, no, I'm going to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And this is what happened.
So. Nah, I'm going to do my own thing.
Yeah.
No, I really liked the Bene Gesserit in this movie.
Yeah.
And I think they were a standout of the first movie as well. Just such an interesting race of characters, if we can call it a race. Let's talk about Paul riding the sandworm.
Good scene. Obviously, it was spoiled for us because they put it in the preview.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it, not as much as I saw it the first time.
Yeah.
But they got the scale right, the worms. That was a big worm, wasn't it? I wouldn't be jumping on that.
Yeah.
So, did you like that scene? I think it was good.
Yeah, no, that was a great scene.
And then you have the music sort of swell up when he rides the worm, and then you get the shots of the Fremen sort of looking at him and being like, that is our Messiah. And there's the particular shot of Javier Bardem that I'll point out to you.
Yeah.
Sort of like right on his face, and you can just see...
He's in shock.
You can just see the revelation.
Yeah.
And so, I like that.
Yeah, that was a funny scene as well. More funny than maybe it should have been.
Yeah.
Because there was parts where Javier Bardem was like, and this goes throughout the whole movie, where he was like, up and down. It was like, ooh, is this the Al Gaib or Lisa Al Gaib? Is it the Lisa Al Gaib? Oh, I don't know. And then, Paul does something extraordinary and he's like, yeah, it's Lisa Al Gaib. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like his character was a lot more serious in the first. Even when he walks in to meet Duke Leto for the first time and he spits, he just walks with grandeur and seriousness. He's there to do something. Yeah. Whereas in this movie, it's like he's a bit of a joke. I don't know. That's sort of what I felt.
I agree. It's going to be interesting on the rewatch in terms of, is that a character change that isn't authentic to the first film?
Yeah. Or
are we seeing Stilgar change because he's in the presence of this religious Messiah?
True.
So he's just so overcome by revelation, by excitement, because they've been waiting thousands of years for this.
Yeah.
The Bene Gesserit came in 1,000 years ago and said, oh, guys, guess what? One day there's going to be this guy comes in. He's going to be the son of a Bene Gesserit, and he's going to lead you to paradise. And they're like, sorry, lead us to paradise? And that's like, no, I won't say anymore. See you later. And so now he comes in, and they've been hearing these stories since childhood. Their grandfather's grandfather was telling them, one day, the Muad'Dib's going to come.
But the Muad'Dib has to be Fremen, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he becomes Fremen. Fremen isn't necessarily...
It's not a race.
It's not a thing you're born into, necessarily.
Yeah.
You can become Fremen.
Okay. So it's like a religion.
Yeah. It's kind of like a faction.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, how Gurney became a smuggler. Gurney could become a Fremen.
Because parts of this movie, it was one of the main themes was the Fremen, the relationship, and I think maybe this is on our list of what to talk about, but the dynamic between the non-believers and the believers, and there was a shift over the course of the movie where, in particular, there was this one female character, not Chani, but Chani's friend.
Chinese friend, yeah.
Is she in the book?
Yes.
Okay, where she's like a huge non-believer, and then Paul does a series of things where, you know, it looks like he's the Mahdi,
and she just starts referring to him,
and she starts believing.
Yeah.
So when Paul undergoes that transformation and becomes Fremen, that's when they all start to believe.
Yeah.
And I think that really sort of peaks when he has that sort of council with all the people. Yeah, is that in the South? That takes place in the South?
Yeah, that's my favourite scene.
Yeah.
That's my favourite scene. In terms of the non-believers and the believers in the Fremen, I don't specifically remember that. I remember that there were some non-believers.
Yeah.
But the book's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
There's the prophecy. Paul gets the sense through his visions that he is going to fulfill this prophecy. They're going to follow him. And what happens next isn't necessarily going to be a good thing. There's going to be some deaths.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thousands, potentially millions.
Yeah.
Potentially billions. And...
well, it's the whole universe, isn't it?
Well, yeah. So, in terms of the non-believers, they obviously put Chani in that faction, and in a big way. That's not in the book. In the book, Chani is a supporter of Paul. She's in love with him. In this film, she's in love with him, but she's not a supporter of him. So I don't quite understand
what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't understand Chani's character. She doesn't have a character arc. She doesn't finish in a different place than where she started.
Yep.
It's not in the book. The reason why I think they changed that is so that we have a Fremen representation of maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe the prophecy, whether it's true or not, is how they enslave us, isn't a good thing. You need to drive that point home because that's the point of the book. The point of the book is you should not automatically subscribe to charismatic leaders. If a charismatic leader says, join me, I'm going to lead you to paradise, you shouldn't just say, hell yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Because atrocity can occur. That's the point of the book. You need to drive that home. They did, but then Chani didn't change. Paul said at some stage in this film, I've seen a vision, Chani will come around.
Yeah.
She will support me. She has to support him.
Yeah.
She doesn't end up supporting him by the end of this film. This is the end of the film, the end of the book. Chani supports Paul pretty much as soon as they meet in the book. So for me, I was waiting for the time when Chani was converted. She needed to be converted because for me, as a viewer, I need to see someone stand up to Paul and go, I don't believe in what you're doing. I don't think you're the prophecy or whatever, or I just don't believe in the prophecy. That's interesting. I like that. That's the theme of the book. But then what needs to happen is Paul needs to do something so remarkable, like, for instance, riding that huge sandworm or looking at someone and saying, I remember what you did when you were 12. Your mother was crying. This is what you did.
Yeah.
You give water to the dead, whatever. And the person's like, oh my gosh, how does he know that? Because he can obviously see the past and the present and the future.
There was a point where that happened.
Yeah. So we needed Chani to be converted because then we go, whoa, hang on a second. She was against him and now she's a full believer. How did he do that? That's kind of manipulative. For me, that would have been better than just Chani being a lone wolf.
Yeah.
Just riding off into the distance at the end and still not subscribing to the whole Paul thing.
I think that's a creative decision. Obviously, it is a creative decision. And I think we're going to see if there is a third movie. Hasn't been confirmed, but basically is. I think we're going to see in the third movie that that sort of that Chani will become a believer. I think Denis Villeneuve just wanted that drama between them, because that's a very common trait in movies, is to have the main two love interests at some point separate and come back together. And
what I'm saying is that should have happened in this film.
In the
they should have
totality
come
of
back
this movie.
together.
Yeah, but I think we're probably going to see that very early on in the third movie.
Well, I imagine, because there are certain things that need to happen.
Denis Villeneuve needed this movie to end on a cliffhanger.
But for me, it still does when they go on the Holy War.
Yeah.
That is the cliffhanger.
Yeah.
You know?
The war against all of the different
Houses.
great houses. Yeah.
That's what Paul's been fearing this whole time. You know, having the visions about there's going to be a holy war in my name.
Yeah.
Atreides flag's going to be paraded around in the name of my dead father, which is exactly what happens. There's a lot of shots of the Atreides flag, which I appreciated. There's one particular shot where Stilgar's crouching down and you can see the Atreides flag in the background. I'm like, man, that's it. That's Dune right there. Stilgar, who's this Fremen guy, lives in the desert. Suddenly he's now fighting a war with the Atreides flag.
Yeah. How sick is that?
But he didn't know who the Atreides were until they showed up.
Yeah.
So that's a bit weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my.
It's not a creative decision that I agree with. I think they could have stuck to the source material, and had Zendaya become a believer.
Yeah. And still driven the point home.
Yeah, I don't know why they did it this way.
Me neither. I think Denny V needs to explain himself.
Yeah.
I think he needs to explain what he was doing, because his final frames are always very deliberate in all of his films.
I mean, think Prisoners. Yeah. Think Arrival. Think Dune Part 1.
Yeah.
Even Enemy, which I hate, has a very particular end frame.
Sicario as well.
Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of them. This didn't feel very particular. This felt sort of, hey, we're making a third part.
This felt like the Holy War's happening.
Yeah.
That's the ending.
Yeah.
Now Chani's going off on her own.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, why? What is she going to do? She's just going to go piss off and be her own Fremen or something?
Yeah.
That's not what happens in the book. And for me, that's breaching a bit too close to changing things.
For the sake of changing things.
Changing things that aren't in the spirit of the novel.
Yeah.
And that's a
good way to
That's
put
my
it.
main thing, because I'm seeing a lot of discussion about, it's an adaptation, so he's going to change some things, though the question becomes, is it in line with the spirit of the novel?
Yep.
The question becomes, what's the spirit of the novel? In my opinion, the spirit of the novel is, some of the Fremen are like, maybe we shouldn't follow this guy into a war that we didn't really want any part of. Some of the other Fremen are like, he's the Messiah, let's do it. All of the Fremen end up just doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those weird decisions where it's like, it could have worked without it.
Especially the final frames, man. It was going so well.
There's certain things in the movie where they deliberately change it to service both the transition of it being on film, like Anya Taylor-Joy's character. That's a creative decision that was done to service film.
And I think that's fine.
And that's a good change.
I actually quite like that.
Yeah.
Because you can't do a toddler running around, like in the book, killing the Baron.
Or Gurney Halleck killing Raban.
Yeah.
That's a creative decision that services the film.
And I think that's an improvement on the book.
Yeah. Yeah. What we've just discussed with Chani, it just feels a bit... Not anything to do with gender or anything
not.
Like that.
I don't think so.
It's just a weird creative decision.
It's not like they made her a girl boss.
Yeah.
Because I was concerned about that. But Chani is kind of a girl boss in the book.
Yeah.
Chani's a warrior.
Yeah.
All the Fremen women are warriors too.
Yeah.
So it's not particularly any feminist message. it's just a change in the story.
Yeah.
And she's a crucial character because she is the love interest. And to have her not support Paul by the end of the film, to me, it's like you take the franchise in a different direction from that point. Because
that's a good point. Where do you go from here?
Because
what does this mean for? Because June Messiah, right? Like, from what I understand, is that from here on out, Chani's a believer.
Yeah,
she's with Paul.
Yeah,
there's no time where she splits off from Paul and goes her own way.
No.
So it's like, what does this creative decision with Chani being the lone wolf mean for June 3? What are they doing with this character? That strays too far from her character.
Absolutely, I agree. It would be like, obviously I haven't read the Lord of the Rings books, but say, at the end of Fellowship of the Ring or something, Sam just decides, nah, I'm good, thanks. Frodo, I don't want to be with you anyway. And he just pisses off.
Yeah.
And then
that's sort of what it feels like.
You can't do that. It's not in the spirit of the novel because they need to be together. Because in the story, they're together.
Yeah. It's a bit odd.
You need a really good justification to change something like that.
I guess we're going to have to wait and see. But I'm not sold at this point. I'm not sold that was a decision made in the spirit of the book.
Dune Messiah, there's going to be a time jump. So what is the resolution going to happen off screen between Chani and Paul? Or because by Dune Messiah, they're already together.
Is there going to be a prelude in June 3 where we see Chani? Is the first act of June 3 going to be Chani, just Chani, doing whatever she needs to do?
God, I hope not.
It's a bit odd. Let's change topics and talk about the bad guys of the movie. Let's talk about the Fade Arena battle.
Oh, yes.
We've briefly touched on it, but we can do more so. Let's talk about Leia Seydoux. Let's talk about the Baron. Let's talk about...
So essentially the Gady Prime section of the film. One of my favourite parts of the film.
I think it was my favourite part.
I was waiting. There was a lot of Fremen stuff at the start. And I was kind of like, I know the scenes that we're going to get in this movie. I kind of want to see them now.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it went Gady Prime, Harkonnen Homeworld or whatever, I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's go. I read that scene in the book a few years ago, and I just like the sandcrawler scene that we see in the first film. I thought to myself, man, I can't wait to see this on screen. It's going to be huge. The Gladiator, arena, and it didn't disappoint. It was terrific.
And I think the reason it worked so well is because prior to this scene they set up Fade Rotha as just like a psychopathic individual where he was just killing people for the sake of just killing people, like testing weapons. And it works really, really well. And Austin Butler just sort of fully dives into this character and just gives it his all.
I know. I've never wanted a spin-off more.
Yeah, just the way he looks, man. Like
he had the presence to him. Every time he was on screen, I was looking at him and not whoever I was supposed to be looking at.
He stole the show a bit.
Yeah.
In his scenes, he stole the show a bit.
Which is good. I don't mind that. I think that's fine. He didn't take away from Paul, if you know what I mean. Like,
no.
He didn't take something from somebody else to... put himself on a pedestal. He just came in and performed really well.
I kind of look at Fade Rotha as like the mirror image to Paul.
That's what it's supposed to be. Yeah, absolutely.
Because
Paul was supposed to be a girl and they were supposed to mate. So it's like the two.
He's sort of like the clone, like the.
It's like the evil version.
The evil twin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're related.
Similar age, related.
Yeah.
Cousin.
Which was a bit of a shock for me. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
My question to you is, was the scene where the one of the final three Iraqians, I guess you could call them. The one that didn't get drugged, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. And that one that doesn't get drugged is actually in the first film.
Oh, okay.
So we'll have to look out for him because he's
I did
actually a
not know
returning
that.
character, and apparently he's also the stunt director. So he's actually the choreography guy.
Cool.
And I must say, choreography in this film,
Great.
some of the best I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was great.
In terms of knife fighting.
Yeah.
It looked so real.
Yeah.
Not in terms of the prequels where, some of the hits you can tell aren't actually to kill the person. They're just to make it look a bit cool.
Yeah. Or they're like swinging the Anakin and Obi-Wan are like swinging the lightsabers for like 5 seconds before they clash.
This is just, you feel like both fighters are genuinely trying to stab each other, trying to kill each other with every move, and they either have to defend or parry or fight back. So I loved both fights in this film.
Yeah. No, it was. The fight scenes were fantastic,
Especially the Fade v Paul one. Obviously,
so
that
good.
was great.
So good.
When he was holding the knife with his hand, doesn't happen in the book, but I loved that. And it was like sliding down his hand.
I love when he does like the what is it? My knife will chip.
Yes, may thy knife chip and shatter.
He holds it up.
Does the
That's so
Atreides
cool.
salute.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like he has embraced the Fremen way, but he's still an Atreides.
That's so cool, man.
Or like he stands like Jarmus and he does the chest bump thing that Jarmus does.
Yeah, I really liked how Jarmus was sort of... There was mention of this earlier in the movie where it was like the desert spirits will talk to you. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like Jarmus was like one of those desert spirits. Like he became one with the desert.
Yeah.
And there was a huge focus on this movie was Paul learning from Jarmus and sort of taking Jarmus's place in a way.
Absolutely.
In the tribe, in the Fremen tribe. And I didn't expect that because Jarmus was sort of he was sort of at the end of Dune Part 1 and he wasn't a very significant character. Like he was just there for Paul to fight and to have an entryway into the Fremen. But they really explored that in this movie and I think that was a great creative decision. Whether that was part of the book, I'm not sure.
No, it is. Cool. Absolutely. He takes his place. He actually gets Jarmus's wife.
Oh, really?
That's the Fremen custom, that if you kill another Fremen, then their wife's now your wife.
Oh.
So Paul inherits a wife. They left that bit out, obviously. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a few things that are a bit weird, like the Baron Harkonnen likes to have little boys to entertain himself.
That's a great creative decision to cut that out.
He specifically requested a little boy that looked a lot like Paul Atreides.
What the...
Which is even more sus when you find out later on that he's his grandfather.
Oh yeah, what? That's so weird. That's where George Lucas got the INCES to from.
Absolutely. So there's a few things they left out, but that's fine.
Interesting.
Yeah. The Baron... Honestly, the Harkonnens overall, apart from Fade, I felt like they did not have the menacing presence that they had in the first film.
Yeah, I agree.
They get humiliated quite
Especially
often.
the Baron.
Yeah.
Especially the
He just gets left on the floor.
Yeah.
And nobody even bothers to pick him up.
Yeah.
I mean, he must not have any... There was obviously not any Harkonnen soldiers in the tent. It was just Sardaukar.
Yeah.
But you'd think that, like, Fade and Raban would, like, help their uncle out.
But I think Fade... He was sort of waiting to ascend to his uncle's position. So he was kind of ecstatic that his uncle was kind of gonna kick the bucket.
I honestly thought that Fade was just gonna run over there and just kill himself just while he was on the floor.
I felt that as well because he was smiling a bit. He was a bit happy.
Yeah.
But no, I think Fade's battle arena was a great scene. Let's briefly touch on Leia Seydoux because I don't think we've touched enough on her. Yeah. The scene where she like holds the Gom Jabbar to Fade's neck, it was kind of like a callback because it's like, oh yeah, I know what's
Put your
about to
hand in the
happen.
box.
And again, it sort of reaffirms that whole notion that Fade is the mirror image to Paul. And, obviously later we find out that Fade goes through that whole process and he survives it. So you're sort of there still wondering, like, okay, is Fade going to ascend to take on Arrakis? Is he going to be the leader of Arrakis? So, yeah, that was a cool little scene. And Denis Villeneuve sort of understands that he doesn't have to show that scene. Like, he doesn't have to show any more than just holding the needle to the neck.
Yeah, we know what happens.
We know what happens. Let's talk about Gurney Halleck's return. And let's talk about his scene with Raban.
Yes. It obviously mentioned in the book and mentioned in this film that Gurney's family were killed by Raban.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, that's why he stayed on Arrakis. So he obviously survived the Battle of Arrakeen.
Mm-hmm.
He had a few soldiers, they sort of dwindled, and a lot of them went off-world. He found his way with the smugglers and to just stay on Arrakis, hoping that one day he'll kill Raban. And stumbles into Paul because of that. He was good. As we said earlier, I think he almost felt like the character that was most authentic to part one of the film. The part one film.
Yep.
In the sense that he was almost the same character, identical character, almost maybe the only character that hasn't radically transformed.
Yeah, into a completely different person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually like that because it connects the films quite nicely. I felt like having an Atreides still there, tied into obviously the betrayal that we see in the first film. So I really liked him. And then obviously he kills Raban at the end, which to me is satisfying because I think that if you're going to set up something like, oh, my family was killed by Raban, he gave me this dope as fuck scar on my jaw, I want my revenge. And then you don't give him the revenge, that makes me frustrated. Like, come on.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why Gurney wants to fight Fade at the end. Because in the book, obviously, he doesn't kill Raban. And he's like, give me a Harkonnen. Like, I want to kill this Harkonnen.
Yeah.
And,
but I think the creative decision to allow him to kill Raban was a smart move.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It worked very well.
The fight, in my opinion, could have been maybe 5-10 seconds longer.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I made a comparison to, and I know you haven't seen Rebels.
Oh, right. Yeah,
but
okay.
There's a scene where Obi-Wan fights Darth Maul. Mm-hmm. You might have seen it. It's on YouTube.
No, I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, and he kills... Spoilers. He kills Darth Maul in, like, the span of, like, 2 hits.
Yeah.
Because he recognizes the same move that Darth Maul pulled on Qui-Gon Jinn, and he counters it straight away. And I feel like that's sort of what they were trying to do here, where Gurney Halleck is such an experienced fighter that he can end this battle in the span of, like, 2 blows. And that's sort of what I felt from this. Mm-hmm. He was so accustomed to their ways that he just ended it that quickly. And that kind of showcases how experienced of a fighter he is.
Yeah, how powerful he is.
Yeah. But you didn't feel that way?
No, I liked it. I think maybe we could have had... I don't even think they crossed blades.
No.
It was sort of just Gurney did a feint and then stabbed him. Mm. I liked it. But if you're going to have such a dramatic entrance, like walking up those steps, like at least give me a few... sort of, especially with how big Raban is in comparison to Gurney. Yeah. I thought that it was going to be a sort of David Goliath situation where, Gurney was going to be like thrown across the room and stuff.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be a battle of brute force versus finesse.
Yeah.
But I still quite like it. Honestly, an improvement on the book, in my opinion. I don't remember who kills Raban, but it wasn't Gurney. And I'm glad that Gurney got his revenge. And for all we know, we actually haven't seen Raban fight. So for all we know, he could just be just a big guy who's clumsy.
Yeah. Yeah, he could be.
He's not actually established as being a great fighter. We just kind of assume that he is. But he's also a coward. He's like General Grievous, isn't he? Like,
yeah.
He runs away.
Yeah, for sure. What would have been cool if we had had that bagpipe theme come back.
Yes.
When he was walking up the stairs.
Yeah,
cool.
I was thinking maybe, but there's no Atreides there anymore. It's just Fremen. So
But him,
Yeah,
but
him.
Gurney Halleck's in Atreides.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
I don't know. That would have been cool. I'll have to on the rewatch. We can see if the music holds up. Let's talk about Jessica's relationship with, is it Aaliyah?
Yes.
Alia,
Yeah, her unborn child.
who is played by, surprise, surprise, Anya Taylor-Joy. Yeah, what did you think of that?
Interesting, obviously a change. I'm fine with the change. I kind of got the sense that Anya Taylor-Joy was going to show up in a vision. I also thought it would be quite possible that Jessica's going to be pregnant, then she's going to give birth, just like she does in the book, and then she's going to walk out of the birthing room and Anya Taylor-Joy is just going to be there, and she's just going to be like fully grown. And it's going to be like, yep,
Yeah.
it's a bit weird, but
Yeah.
that's how it is.
Yeah.
That would have been fine with me, honestly, because it's just a bit weird, and June's a bit weird.
Yeah. No, I think that would have worked.
Instead, we got the unborn fetus that's essentially a tool for Lady Jessica to just talk.
Yeah.
Look, we got the sense that the fetus is obviously a wise, intelligent being already, which is why she's called the Abomination, because she is conscious in the womb and has the knowledge of thousands of Reverend Mothers. She's already a Reverend Mother and she's a fetus.
Yeah.
I thought that was very well done. The vision was cool. You know, where we actually saw Anya Taylor-Joy. Obviously interested to see her in the next movie.
There was a moment where after she had the water of life, where the Fremen found out that she was pregnant.
Yeah.
And that to me was a really cool moment.
Yeah.
Where they were like, what have we done? What have we birthed here? You know, what have we given rise to?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Dune Messiah takes this character further, because from what I understand is that she's like the destroyer of worlds. Like, she's gonna bring some chaos to Dune. But I could be completely wrong about that as well.
Very important character going forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to see a lot of her, which is good. I like Anya Taylor-Joy. So
yeah, Mad Max vibes.
Absolutely got Mad Max vibes during that vision,
Yeah.
just because of the sand.
Yeah.
And did she have blue eyes? I think she might have.
Ooh, I don't know.
Yeah.
It would make sense if she did, though.
She definitely wasn't blonde, though, which makes sense because Paul's not blonde.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Let's talk about... Actually, we've touched on Princess Irulan and the Emperor a bit. Did you want to mention anything else there? Or?
No, I think we covered it off. Irulan, for me, was very well done. To me, I have no issues with Irulan. I have slight issues with the Emperor in the sense that he wasn't as menacing as perhaps he could have been, as powerful. We've already spoken about that, though. I don't think Florence Pugh was robbed of scene time or whatever. I quite like her. I think her outfits, I like the last outfit. I liked the outfit that she wore just in the gardens with her hair sort of slicked back.
Yeah.
Like a golden crown sort of thing.
Yeah, that was
very
cool.
simplistic, minimalistic, Denny V style.
She's sort of got three different ones, doesn't she? She's got that one. She's got the sort of helmet thing she wears, and then she's got like the silver.
I like the silver one the best.
Silver one, yeah.
Yeah.
We've touched on this briefly, but there's this moment, which you mentioned was your favourite moment, where Paul he drinks the water of life and he embraces the prophecy. He sort of becomes who he's meant to be, or who he's meant to be in the eyes of the Fremen. Because he doesn't want to accept it at the start of the movie. You know, he doesn't want to go to the south because he fears that it's going to bring an end to the universe. But there's that scene where he travels to the south and he meets with all of the leaders of the Fremen tribes, and he sort of just walks in there and just tells them all to shut up.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I'm the Mahdi, you have to listen to me.
That's the turning point for the character, I think.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see on Rewatch if I can pinpoint Paul's personality changing to a specific moment. Because for me, it was... it wasn't as clear as I might have liked. Obviously, we see Paul in the first film. He doesn't even want to be the leader of Atreides.
Yeah.
He becomes leader of Atreides because his dad dies, and he speaks with Duncan Idaho. He reassures Duncan Idaho. He kind of takes on the Duke sort of role, but now he's becoming the Fremen leader, and then he's becoming the Messiah. And I don't know. I'll be interested to see on Rewatch if I can pinpoint the moments where he has gone, I'm going to embrace this prophecy,
Yeah.
But my favourite scene is the scene where he goes to the council and they say, "Oh, you can't speak here. You're not a leader." And Stilgar's like, "Just kill me, mate. I'll just kill me.
Yeah.
Then you can speak."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, you're my best fighter. I make the rules here now." And then he says, "I'm the Lisal gatekeeper," or whatever. And they're all like, maybe he is. And then he just pinpoints, he starts talking generally about Fremen experience.
Yeah.
And you just see that he's looking at one particular individual.
Yeah.
And he essentially just like tells the individual his life story back to him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah.
I mean, could be a fake for all we know. Like, could have been planted.
Could be.
But I think it's real, and Paul has the ability to do that. So he demonstrates his power and converts them. Chani stands up and goes, "This is how they enslave us." At this point in the movie, I'm thinking, Chani, shut up. You've had your moment.
Yeah.
You've hit the point home of this is how they enslave us. It's time for you to get on board or just leave the movie.
Yep.
Gurney pulls her out, like pulls her down, and I thought, that's it. She's done now.
Yeah.
She's out.
Yeah.
That's the movie's way of saying, sit down.
Yeah.
That's enough from you.
Yeah.
And it should have been enough, but it wasn't. Like, she kept doing it. Then obviously the movie ends with her. So for me, if I could make one change, I would just take Chani. I would give her no story involvement after that point. You can still have her watching Irulan take Paul's hand in marriage and stuff and get her reaction to that. But just leave it ambiguous as to whether she's going to continue to love Paul or not.
Yeah.
So for me, it just takes the wrong approach by providing an answer to, is she going to fall in love with Paul? Because for me, I watch this movie and I think, no, she's going to like divorce him as far as I'm concerned. Like, get the family law papers ready because there's going to be a Fremen divorce.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've touched on it. But it's just a weird decision.
But anything else you want to talk about?
Let's talk about the final battle.
Ooh, yes.
For me, it was particularly the scene where there's the invasion of the throne room, where that to me was where I had the first sort of feeling that this emperor is someone important, because the way that all of his Sardaukar sort of crowd around him and protect him, that was when I was like, okay, this is the emperor I've been wanting to see. This guy means something.
And he's sitting on his really high chair.
Yeah.
So I like that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, but that scene in particular where there's the Sardaukar sort of marching into the dust and they don't know what's there. They're just marching because that's what they're being told to do.
Because they're fearless.
And then Paul comes in just like an absolute badass and just sort of,
I thought that was going to be Aaliyah.
Okay.
I thought that was going to be Anya Taylor-Joy because she goes in to kill the Baron.
Yeah.
So when the Fremen person showed up, I was like looking at the dimensions and I was like, is that? I don't think so. Maybe.
Yeah.
But no, it was Paul.
They could have done that. They definitely could have done that. And that would have been accurate. But yeah, the way that sort of Paul comes in and just sort of spits in the face of the Emperor.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And just kills the Baron by stabbing him in the neck.
Yeah.
And that's a point as well that I knew as soon as I knew that Anya Taylor-Joy was in the movie, I knew that she wasn't going to be killing the Baron. Elia wasn't going to be killing the Baron. So somebody else needed to do it. I thought maybe Jessica would do it because obviously that's her father. But then I thought...
Wait, that's not her father. Oh, it is her father.
No, it is. Yeah.
She never knew who her father was.
Yeah, that's the Bene Gesserit. That's what the Bene Gesserit do. They don't know their fathers and stuff. That's why they say go have relations with your cousin or whatever. They don't know he's their cousin or, stuff like that. So Paul killing the Baron was my expected result because who else is going to do it?
Yeah.
You need to also get the sense that he just killed the Baron and the Baron was just laying there. He was helpless and Paul just went, you're an animal. You're going to die like an animal. And they just stabbed him. And you're like, does a hero do that? Does a hero just walk up to the bad guy helpless and just stab him in the neck and be like, you're an animal?
You're done.
Yeah.
And then they just throw him in the
desert.
In the sand for the ants to eat him.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. That was a pretty cool shot. I like the worm riding scene as well, where they were like riding in on the different worms.
Yeah, that was a great sort of X Factor moment. Yeah. Just seeing the worm that high up for the first time.
Yeah.
Dope.
That was a cool scene. Let's touch briefly on the CGI because one of the final battles in the first movie, there's a vision of the battle between the Sardaukar / Harkonnens and the Fremen / Atreides. And my God, the CGI was so bad.
In the first film?
It was so bad.
I thought it was fine until he took the helmet.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. The helmet.
Because they clearly just put Charlemagne's face on
the
someone else.
Double. Yeah. It just sort of took me out of the movie, but obviously they've listened to the audience backlash and they've said, this is what we actually were trying to do, and it worked well.
In the sense that they put Chani there instead,
or just the fact that they didn't do that CGI. Well, regardless of what character it was, it felt real.
They put a real costume on the person.
Yeah. You made the comparison of it being like Power Rangers suits in the first movie.
I honestly quite liked the suits. I think it's fine, the change they made, because we've established both in the book and in the films that Paul's visions aren't necessarily 100% true. They could be true. Sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. Sometimes parts of it happens.
Yeah.
So it's like 70% accurate.
Yeah.
So, was he having a vision of that specific battle, or was he having a vision of another battle?
Yeah.
So, but it was a pretty distinct pose at the end that...
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about... let's just talk about the missing characters, and then we'll talk about the final battle between Fade and Paul.
So my main gripe with this movie is that the change with Chani's character. My second gripe is that Thafir Hawat is not in the film.
But he is.
But he's not.
He's in the cast list.
Yeah, but he's not.
Did we miss him?
No chance.
I don't think we did.
No chance. So for me, if you're not going to put Thafir Hawat in the second film, then you need to take him out of the first film. You can't introduce a character in the first film and then just leave him out of the second film. If you want to leave him out of the second film, he needs to not be in the first film.
Yeah.
You can't just have a character disappear out of the world, because we've already established that Thafir Hawat is a character in this adaptation of Dune.
Yeah.
Just like, they left out Count Fenring, who was the Emperor's only friend, who was also trained to be the Kwisatz Haderach, but he wasn't successful. And so they went with other prospects. He wasn't in the film, and that's fine because they've omitted him and they've given Leia Seydoux a bit of what he was doing.
Yeah.
Thafir Hawat, to not have him in the second part there's no excuse for it, in my opinion. You need to explain it somewhere, even if it's just a throwaway line.
Yeah.
In the book, he's captured by the Harkonnens and used as the mentat to the Baron. you could easily have done that. You
Yeah.
could have easily put him in the corner of a Baron's room,
For sure.
put him in chains or whatever, and then you don't need to say that he's going to get released when the Atreides win, or you can change it a bit, but you can't just leave him out. It'd be like if Lady Jessica just disappeared from the film, or Gurney Halleck just never showed up again. Just like, you have to answer that question.
Where did he go? To me, it sounds like a casting issue where they probably couldn't get him on board because of conflicting shoots or whatnot.
Maybe.
It's just a bit weird to disclude him from the movie when he was not an integral part of the first movie, but he was there.
He was a named character.
Yeah, I mean, he was a named character. He's on the cast list, so we're going to have to look out for him in part 2, but I'm almost certain he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Let's finish and talk about this fight between Paul and Feyd-Rautha.
Choreography, fantastic. Acting, brilliant. Atmosphere, even better. Everyone watching, just like in the book, loved it.
There's a great shot as well, where there's like the sunset behind them, and they're sort of like silhouetted. Yeah, fantastic shot.
Love the fighting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great sequence, and I chatted to you before the movie started, and you were like, what are your predictions? And the main two things for me was this battle between Feyd and Paul, and obviously the big final battle overall. And I feel like I sort of hit the nail on the head there. And to me, it was done very, very well. There was a moment there where I didn't really know which way the battle was going to sway.
Yeah.
I was sort of like, shit, is Paul going to die for the second time? Yeah, and then I sort of... I felt like it wasn't really clear how he killed him. How he killed Feyd.
I agree.
But I'm guessing he just sort of stabbed him. And then...
I think he took the knife out of his stomach and put it in Feyd. But
yeah. But it should have been more clear.
We don't see it.
Yeah.
So my thought on that is maybe the fact that we don't see it is sort of like
we're
living in Feyd's perspective, right? Like
or anyone else's perspective for that matter.
Feyd's got him.
Yeah.
And now there's a knife in his heart.
Yeah.
In the book, he puts a knife through his head. So I was
waiting for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they fall on the ground, and then Paul rolls him over and then puts a knife through his head.
Does Paul get stabbed?
There's a point in the movie where they fall on the ground.
Yeah.
I was thinking, here we go. And then they get up, and I'm like, wait, they're going to fall on the ground again? Or
yeah.
But no, he doesn't get stabbed. He gets cut a few times, and Feyd's using some tricks, like he's using a poison, and he's also using a poison dart on his hip. So he's got all these tricks within tricks. So he's not playing fair.
Yeah. And I feel like that was a theme that sort of was introduced very early on in the movie, where they drugged the final people from Arrakis. Yeah, but no, I think it was done great, probably apart from the fact that it was just a bit unclear how he died.
I didn't even think I heard anything either.
No. I mean, a second watch is going to confirm, so we'll have to wait and see, I guess. Did you have anything else that you wanted to touch on before?
No, I just really wish it ended a bit differently.
Yeah.
There's a line, I mean, I was speaking to you last night about how the book ends. It's not the best ending, but it would have been better than what Denis did in this film.
Yeah.
So for me, when you change it, it better be better than the book, and it wasn't.
But I think that final quote, because I went home and read the final page of the book, and I think that quote is quite good.
Yeah, no,
I think it could have ended quite well on that.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm saying it would have been better than what we got.
I think it would have been a hell of a lot better than what we got.
Yeah.
Or even just ending it on that final battle.
I just don't... yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Go off to the Holy War, get a shot of Paul looking up at some ships or something, maybe go back to Lady Jessica, then the end.
It just... I feel like it won't last. It's going to age poorly.
I just don't understand what the message was in that final frame with Chani calling the sandworm, and she looks upset, she's crying. I don't understand what the message is there, because she's been against him this whole time.
Yeah.
Her character hasn't changed at all.
Yeah.
So there's nothing new being presented.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, guess what? Chani still doesn't like him. That's it.
And movie.
It's like we had these huge battles and everything, and we ended on, oh, his girlfriend still doesn't like him.
Yeah. And
which is not how it happens in the book.
And we've had discussions, we spoke earlier about this, where Denis is so particular about his endings. You could look at any movie he's made and remember the ending like that. It's so particular and it's so distinct. But yeah, this ending was just, it felt weird. Like there's nothing significant about it. Like, yeah. I mean, the only way to put it is it's just weird.
This whole story has been about Paul's rise to power and the holy war that's going to be caused by his rise to power. And we end on Chani calling a sandworm.
But again, it's not like a sexist thing. It's not like nothing against a female character being in that position. It's differing from the source material, and it's nothing significant. Like you've gone through this whole movie, you've watched this whole movie, which has been like a cinematic event.
Yeah.
And you end on something that's pretty much already been established throughout the whole movie. That Chani is a lone wolf. That she's doing her own thing. Why do we need to end the movie?
Why do we care?
Already knowing that?
Chani can go off and do her own thing as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't change what the significant event of this story, which is that the Holy War is now happening. We should be leaving the film thinking, oh my gosh, this Holy War is going to cause so many deaths, so much tragedy. Instead, we're leaving the film thinking Zendaya's sad.
Yeah.
And, nothing against Zendaya. She's just doing what she's told.
Yeah. It's just a bit weird. That's the only way to put it. We've got some reviews here. You've chosen one from Forbes. I've chosen one from a article called IndieWire.
Both pillars of mainstream trash.
Is there a particular thing you wanted me to read in this article?
Look, so let me first name drop this guy, Eric Kahn.
Let's shame you, Eric Kane.
Senior contributor, okay? So the senior contributor goes through some positives and some mixed. I'm going to jump straight to the bad.
Yeah.
My biggest problem with Herbert's novel is the ending. It's very abrupt. A lot of big action stuff, a massive war happens. It all happens off screen. It all sort of wraps up in a hurry. What do you say to that?
No.
But the big battle at the end also feels rushed. The good guys make such quick work out of the Harkonnen forces, and these supposedly super duper elite Sardaukar, it's almost laughable. What are your thoughts on that?
Did this guy watch the same movie? Is he talking about the book or the movie?
The movie.
Okay. No, I don't agree with that. I think the whole battle between, because there's scenes where after the battle between Fade and Paul finishes, there's scenes where we still see Gurney fighting people.
Yeah.
So it's still continuing. It's not like, hey, this battle's happened. It's over.
Just because he's rocked up in the Emperor's.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I didn't feel that at all. No. I sort of also felt like the battle between Fade and Paul was a vessel for the battle overall. Like this was a representation of the battle on a smaller scale. These were sort of the icons of either side, you know? But no, I don't really agree with the fact that it was super rushed at all. What do you think?
I see what he's saying. In the book, I agree. It's very rushed. It's very much like and they got the sandworms, and they were going to storm Arrakeen. And then after they finished the battle, Raban's dead, Baron was dead. Now he's talking with the Emperor. And it's like, hold up a second. I wanted to see what that was about. I feel like the movie was very faithful to that in the sense that they didn't spend 30 minutes during the battle. But we still got some great shots of sandworms storming the place.
More than what the book.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So it improved.
Yeah.
We got Gurney fighting Raban. We got Gurney just fighting Harkonnens.
Yeah.
We got the Atreides flag being waved. We got Stilgar leading the troops. We got... One of my favourite shots of the film is when Paul is walking in isolation down a sand dune. And it's a very wide shot. And you see the Fremen army come over the dune as
I
well.
got Lord of the Rings vibes from that. Like where Gandalf sort of rocks up at Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
And there's all the horses that come over the edge. Or even like the Battle of Rohirrim where they rock up at Minas Tirith to like help out on that battle.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just got Lord of the Rings vibes from that.
Fair enough. It was a great shot. Look, this person also had a problem with Fade Rautha, saying that he was given a bit more complexity than in the book, saying things like, well fought Atreides when he gets killed, and telling the prisoner of war, well, oh, you fought well, Atreides, as he kills him. It's not in the book. That's quite a sincere thing to say, almost like he respects the opponent.
That I can agree with. I agree with that take in the fact that this psychotic character probably wouldn't
say, good job for killing me.
Yeah.
He'd be like, curse you.
Yeah.
So I agree on that.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be adding complexity to Fade because the Harkonnens are very, very outlandish.
Yep.
Which is something that this man also says in his article. You know, they kill their subordinates just like Darth Vader does, just to prove that they're evil. They have cannibal friends. They torturing killing their workers and just. But then to have him be like, well fought Atreides, as if he has some sort of respect for a duel, when he doesn't, because he plays tricks on Paul in the book.
Yeah.
And he does everything in his power to trick him and just to beat him, give himself an unfair advantage.
It sort of speaks like a redemption for him, when I don't think we needed a redemption for him.
No. We don't want to redeem him.
No.
He's supposed to be the big bad.
Yeah.
Also, a point that Mr. Forbes man makes in his article is that there's too many famous people in this movie, and therefore it takes him out of it. What do you think about that?
What does that take?
As if, like, the cast is too good. I imagine he had the same criticism about Oppenheimer.
Yeah. What is it? You can't make that criticism. Does he want, like Star Wars, where they all were pretty much unknown?
There are too many famous people, and I think the films would have benefited from lesser-known actors.
No.
I almost laughed when Paul had his vision of an older Aaliyah, and she's played by Anya Taylor-Joy in the briefest of cameos.
No, that's just a bit weird.
But the one casting choice I want to focus on here for now is that of Christopher Walken as Emperor Shaddam.
Oh.
I love Walken. He's great in many things, but he is absolutely the wrong person for this role.
Completely agree.
Walken is a national treasure, and even his smaller roles, Pulp Fiction, True Romance, the list goes on, he nails every time. He isn't bad here either. He's just the wrong casting choice for Dune.
Yep.
I haven't felt this strongly about a casting snafu since Nicole Kidman's role in The Northman.
No, I didn't really care about Nicole Kidman in The Northman. But no, I agree with his take on Christopher Walken, that he was just a poorly cast.
Oh, fucking guess what I've just seen?
What?
Finally, 2 hours and 46 minutes.
God, here we go.
Is too long, especially since this is the second in what I believe will be a trilogy. Man, this guy works for Forbes, and he doesn't understand that this is the second part of the first book. It's not a trilogy. There's going to be 3 movies,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean there's a trilogy.
You know what I say to that? What I say to that is that guy's review is too long. You need to write less, bro. But then again, I mean, here we are clocking it at 2 hours, 20 minutes.
I'm sorry, I know I say this all the time, but very few films justify these long run times.
Shut up.
I wonder if he likes The Godfather.
Yeah. Oh my god, The Godfather's like the best movie ever made, but let's not pay attention to the time.
There were many great scenes in Dune Part 2, but a lot could have been cut.
Like what? What could have been cut?
Like
Does he say
for
what?
It's not a very long book. I'm sorry, what?
It's like it's like 500 pages.
The first book is like the length of the next 3 books combined. The first book's at least 600 pages.
Yeah.
Of the paperback that I have.
Yeah.
To say that it's not a long book, I mean, what are you reading? What are you reading that makes...
like the Iliad and the Odyssey, bro? Like, what is this guy reading? That's a bit odd. Does he say what could have been cut?
Of course not.
Yeah, of course.
Of course not.
Because it's such an easy comment to make.
That's all right. He only writes for Forbes.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a well-known website or anything.
I've got this snippet from an IndieWire article.
Okay.
It's written by a guy called David Ehrlich, which he's actually pretty popular on Letterboxd.
Oh, I already don't like him.
I
recognize him.
He wrote a pretty long review on this, but
Okay.
I took this snippet and I'll read it out. Villeneuve introduces, so this is in relation to Fade. Villeneuve introduces him in a hideous monochromatic fight sequence that so clumsily literalizes the film's black and white moral binary that it feels like a detour into a Zack Snyder movie. And from that point on, Fade Rother never has a chance to rise above his look to become a rival worthy of Paul's ascendance. His only scene that doesn't bring Part 2 into an absolute standstill involves Léa Seydoux dropping by for some light under-the-skin cosplay. What do you take away from that?
So did he just say that Fade's best scene in the film was where he was having relations with Léa Seydoux?
Pretty much.
That was his worst scene in the film. Not that it was bad.
And that he doesn't like the black and white, because it feels like a Zack Snyder movie.
So that's your first L.
Yeah.
The first L is saying that, and it's not black and white. It's like it's chromatic. It's something. It's not black and white. It's not as simple as that. So
hideous monochromatic fight sequence.
Okay.
The film's black and white moral binary. I mean, some of these reviewers just use too fancy words. You know?
Yeah. If he wants to say that Dune has very simple good guys and bad guys, then I think he misunderstands the core premise of Dune.
He gave Dune a 2.5 and Dune a 2-star, by the way.
And what does he give a 5-star? Bloody licorice pizza.
Let's look it up.
A movie about a 25-year-old woman seducing a 16-year-old boy.
5 stars. You want my waterbed? I mean, what do we expect?
How did I just call that?
Yeah.
This is the type of letterbox user that drives me nuts. Okay, so let's take it apart. If you think that Dune has very distinct good guys and bad guys, then you fatally understand the premise of Dune. Secondly, to say that the arena fight wasn't one of the best scenes in the film, I think is a mistake. It's obviously a very innovative way to film something. I think it's edited very well. I think the choreography is really good. What else is he bloody...
He gave Oppenheimer a 3.5 as well, from memory. Just putting that out there, because I think that's necessary to note.
Okay. And what else does he say?
Well, he also just says that Paul, he's not a rival. He's not a worthy rival of Paul.
Well, then he didn't watch the fight. Did he not watch the last fight? Because Paul was stabbed and pushed on the ground.
Yeah. It's just... It's a weird take Because I feel like most people would go out of that movie thinking, hey, this Fade dude was one of the best parts of it.
Yeah.
And the choice to have it in, this monochromatic black and white filter looked fucking awesome. What were you watching? Was he a fan of Oppenheimer's black and white? Does this guy just hate on black and white?
I think this guy just likes to be a contrarian.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think we shall leave him be to enjoy his movie about a 25-year-old woman seducing a 16-year-old boy. And how that's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
Because he obviously likes that sort of stuff.
Oh, God. Right.
So we'll leave him to enjoy that terribly boring movie
Yeah.
with a morally hideous message that he gave a perfect review.
Yeah. Crazy.
He's a disgrace.
Okay, let's wrap up just in the interest of time. You made mention here that maybe this should have been a TV show.
Yeah, so I don't think necessarily it could have been a TV show. However, I hope that in maybe once we're done with the Dune films, just like how we were finished with the Harry Potter films, we get to look back and say, you know what? Those films were really good. They got the themes right. They got the blockbuster action right. However, I think I want to see
More.
90% of the book and not
70.
70 or maybe even lower. It's kind of
Yeah.
the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
And I understand that you need to do that for the time restraints. And even if, as much as you try and get the film down, idiots on Forbes will say that it's too long. So you can't win.
There's always gonna be people out there that, like yourself, you've read the book and you favor the source material being accurately portrayed more than anything else.
Yeah.
And like you said, the Harry Potter franchise it's a great franchise, but there's a lot, and I mean a lot, that they leave out of that franchise.
Well, that's my perspective.
No, they do. They leave a hell of a lot out.
No, I've read the Harry Potter books
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But as a Dune fan, I feel like they've left a lot of stuff
Oh
out.
yeah.
It may not be, the story still resolves in the appropriate way. The themes are still the same, but there's a lot of scenes that I think would have been really cool. They weren't in there. And obviously there's some characters that are left out that I think were really good. So,
Yeah. So maybe it's the fact that 10 years from now, like they're doing with the Harry Potter franchise,
yes, absolutely.
they make a TV show where every season is focused on a particular portion of the book.
Yeah.
Just like the different years are going to be different seasons with this Harry Potter TV show.
And look, but it won't be Denis doing it.
No.
It'll be somebody else. Thank you, Denis V,
Yes.
for 2 glorious movies and adapting a book with such care. I may have issues with one character in this film, but to have an issue with just one character in this day and age with an adaptation of a book that was released
It's a
over
success.
50 years ago,
Yeah.
I'm amazed.
Yeah.
And how we've got this movie with Warner Bros. Distributing it,
Yeah.
it's a miracle. It's a miracle, and I thank Denis V. If there's not another one, I'll be happy. I love Dune Messiah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I hope we do get another one. What's next, just from your perspective as a reader of the Dune franchise, what's next for Dune? What are we going to see next?
We'll see a Dune Messiah movie. I think it's all but confirmed. We'll see another movie. They are doing a TV show of the Bene Gesserit. That was supposed to have released before this movie. I believe
They're doing an MMO?
they've changed the name of
Yep.
it. Obviously, a director left. Big issues. I think that needs to go in the bin because by the sounds of it,
It's terrible.
it's not been doing well.
Okay.
So I think that idea needs to go in the bin. If we're going to do a TV show, then
Have Denis V produce it.
exactly have him be able to dedicate some time to it because he wasn't able to direct any of the episodes or anything, and now it's essentially all but being cancelled at this stage. So that's dead in the water. The only thing we can hope for is that Dune 2 performs well at the box office and it wins enough awards so that Warner Bros. Will do a third one.
Yeah, for sure. Let's finish up by talking about the soundtrack real quick.
Okay.
Were there any, obviously, we've got a playlist. You can find it on Spotify. It's called the Rewatch playlist,
Yep.
I think. Alternatively, it'll be in the description of this video if you're listening on YouTube. We had 2 songs from each movie that we watched, which we think stood out the most. Were there any 2 that stood out to you?
Not particularly. I was sort of just wrapped up in the movie. Wasn't able to necessarily point out the distinct tracks, though I really liked the Paul and Chani love theme, which I believe is contained in the song. I think it's a tale of a time of quiet between the storms, just at the top there.
Oh, yeah.
That contains the love theme. Look, Hans Zimmer cooked. We've discussed this.
He always does.
He's a master of his work.
Yep.
There's rarely a score that he does that we don't love. Thank you, Hans Zimmer. We hope to see you again soon.
Yep.
In June 3. And,
I think we'll add the 2 songs once we rewatch the movie.
okay.
Then we'll have a clearer understanding of what there is. But as of right now, we're probably thinking A Time of Quiet Between the Storms, and I also quite liked the Lisan El Gaib.
So what did you like about that one?
It sort of reminded me of My Road Leads Into the Desert, which is like the concluding song of the first movie, where it's big, it's epic, it's grandiose. It's just, that's pretty much how I could describe it. But again, we'll probably rewatch before adding anything.
Fantastic.
Did you want to wrap it up?
Look, it was a great score. Not necessarily as distinct as the first one, but not every score needs to do that, if you know what I mean. There was a lot going on in this film, so I almost feel like it may have been a direction from Denis. Like, there's so much going on here, Hans. Like, can you just blend it in a bit more?
Yeah.
Can you not try and steal the show as much as you did in the first one?
Yeah.
Because there's like a spice harvester scene in this movie where, a very similar scene was in the previous film, and that has a very distinct song that plays throughout. Whereas here, there's a lot of dialogue in the scene. Yeah. So the music just doesn't get its time to shine.
For sure.
But that's okay, because the other things are still just as good, like the performances and the visuals and everything. What do we think in terms of a rating?
Do you want to go first?
Look,
I'm pretty set on my rating.
Look, I'm not going to give it an A+. That's all I know so far. I'm not giving it an A+, because I have an issue with Chani and how she finishes the film. I have no problem with her role being expanded. I actually quite liked it, because it drives the main core theme of the novel home, that maybe the Lisan Al Gaib is not going to do good things for the Fremen. You needed to drive that point home. Chani did. There was a point where she overstayed her welcome. And to finish the movie on her riding a sandworm, to me, is puzzling and requires explanation. So therefore, I can't give it an A+. Now, whether I give it an A or an A- is another question. It's going to be on the A tier. So I'm let me go an A-.
Yep.
To remain safe. I mean, on rewatch, it could go up, it could go down. I'm not quite sure. What about yourself?
I did not see you giving that an A-, to be honest.
What?
I thought you were going to give it an A, but I'm on the same
I'm torn.
position as you. No, well, I'm not torn. I'm feeling an A-.
Okay.
I'm pretty strong on an A-. I know that your main issue is Chani and how the movie ends. That's an issue I felt as well. But I feel like there was more issues that I had with this movie as well.
Okay.
The Emperor.
Yeah, of course.
Certain scenes being left out. Just certain characters not really having the full, expansive character arc that I was looking for. Obviously, time constraints. But yeah, I feel like the first movie it flowed better. it had more moments that I was in awe of. I sort of knew when I left Dune as well that I'd just seen a masterpiece. Like
The first one?
I'd just seen a modern classic. I left this movie and I was still like a bit hesitant. Like I felt like there was almost too much stuff going on, and I generally know when I see a movie, and I know that it's like 5 stars. I'm like, yeah, okay, that was fucking awesome. I'm gonna get that 5 stars. I didn't feel that about this movie. And, call me a contrarian, call me whatever you want, because majority of people are saying that
This is the best movie ever
this
made.
is the best movie ever made and that it's, miles ahead of the first movie. But I don't know, I feel like I enjoyed the slow pace of the first one more. I think the music was better. I think that it had more scenes that were memorable. I think it probably also will hold up on rewatch better than the second one. Because I don't know, I feel like those flaws in the second one are just going to be, they're going to be a lot clearer on a rewatch. Like I'm going to be watching it and I'm going to be knowing that the Emperor's just kind of a letdown. And that's just something that you can't overlook, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm in the same bracket as you with giving this an A-. I'm afraid that it might go down on rewatch, but let's hope it doesn't. I know it's not going to go up. I'm hoping it sort of stays the same.
Danny V has said, I don't want to do an extended cut. My cut is the cut.
Mm-hmm.
He's not in charge of that decision, ultimately.
Yeah.
It'll be a decision of Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
If there was a longer version of both films, would you be interested?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd watch it. Yeah. No, I think there's certain scenes that need to be included, and certain character dynamics that need to be explored further. So if there is a 10-hour cut of the 2 movies out there, I'll watch it. I love the world. I love the characters. So it's not something like with the original Blade Runner where I just don't have any interest in watching any other cut, like the 5 different cuts that are of that movie. I enjoy this world, so that's something I'd be open to.
All right. Well, bless the maker and his water. Want to take us out?
Let's take us out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Rewatch Podcast. If you would like to follow us on Instagram, you can do so at the Rewatch Pod. We like posting memes and stuff on there. If you'd like to subscribe to the YouTube channel, just search the Rewatch on YouTube. Obviously, we have the Spotify playlist, which we've just mentioned. What's the next episode? What's next?
I don't know, man, because there's not a lot of great films coming out. So we'll have to revisit a classic. We may soft reboot the podcast J.J. Abrams style. We'll see what happens. But the reason why we haven't been doing many isn't because we don't like discussing films. Obviously, we've been discussing films off the podcast continuously, but yeah, it's just a tough time for cinema at the moment. Obviously, we're dealing with the effects of an unknown virus that delayed a lot of things, and we're sort of and then obviously the strikes as well. Yeah. So we're sort of in a black void of content at the moment, and good films. We used to get 5 or 6 4.5 to 5 star films a year. Think of like 2021, for instance.
Even 2014 was a crazy year for cinema.
Yeah. And these past 2 years or so,
it's been a bit rough.
Yeah, it's good to get maybe 2 or 3 4.5 star movies, and rare to get just a perfect film. Like, thank goodness for Oppenheimer. So hopefully things improve. It's not our fault.
Well, on that note, thank you for listening. Bye for now, and long live cinema.
Long live Shai Hulud.